I just got 3:30.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, October 13th, 2022. If we could have a call to order and roll call, please.
Good afternoon and welcome to our new commissioners. This is Yvette and I will go ahead and start the roll call. Commissioner Burling.
Here.
Excuse me if I get our two new commissioners' names incorrect. Kelly Brzezowski.
Here.
Commissioner Michi.
Mindy. Here.
Chair Myers.
Here.
Commissioner Sowers.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and start with public appearances. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda during public appearances. Each person's comments shall be limited to 3 minutes or is otherwise established by the commission. Matters not appearing on commission's agenda will not receive action at this meeting, but may be referred to staff for a future meeting. Persons are not required to give their names, but it is helpful for speakers to state their names so that they may be identified in the minutes of the meeting. So I'll go ahead and open it up to the chamber first, if there's anyone here in the chamber that would like to make a public appearance. Okay, it doesn't look like it, so then I'll open it up to those of you that are participating online. Is there anyone from the public online that would like to make an appearance? Yvette, do you see anybody? I don't see any hands up. I don't see anyone unmuting themselves.
I don't see any hands either.
Okay, well then we'll go ahead and close public appearances and then we will move into announcements. Turn it over to the director.
I think 4 announcements this time. First of all, I wanted to welcome our new commissioners, Commissioner Mickey, and Commissioner, this one's harder, Brzezowski, right? So welcome aboard. We had the pleasure of meeting them at my office a couple weeks ago to kind of get a little orientation, and sounds like they've done their homework, so welcome aboard. We appreciate your service. I would like to make a suggestion to the commission. This is a new commission now, as we have new commissioners. Although this past summer, just recently, you set the chair and the vice chair, and we have some new commissioners. So I would recommend that continue with the commission, the chair and vice chair as you have it today until next summer, and then have a vote at that time. But that's up to the commission. Sounds like we're seeing some nodded heads, so that's good. Just wanted to point out that on the scenic pathway benches, all of your commission's comments, as we discussed on last 2 occasions, and all the documents, literally a full notebook of all the documents, have been turned over to the planning department. So they'll be working with the planning commission. So give them quite a few months until we are able to see a draft of the revised policy. But the Forest and Beach Commission is off the hook for now, but it will come back. Third is, for today, apparently we have to still wear our masks. Starting next month, our agenda is going to be slightly different. So I just want to give you a heads up that will no longer be requiring proof of vaccination at the door. So it'll be open to people who are unvaccinated. But in terms of mask wearing, it will depend on the level of I'm no expert, but on the CDC guidelines for Monterey County. There's 3 levels of criteria: low, medium, and high transmission. Currently, we're in low. So a month from now, when we post the agenda, if it's low that day, People can come in without, no one has to wear a mask. It's optional. You can always wear a mask, but it's optional. If the day it's posted, if it's medium or high, we all have to wear masks again, whether or not we're vaccinated. So it'll be a little bit different on the next month's agenda, but just that's what that's all about. We'll still have the hybrid format like we do today, in person and online. And just a quick shout out, my fourth announcement. We have 7 public hearings this time. I think that's the most we've had since I've been the director for the past 5.5 years. Our new administrative analyst, Tom Ford, who was outside greeting everyone, he did the lion's share on authoring these reports, and he just started in July. So he did, certainly with the guidance from Sarah and myself, but he did the lion's share of putting these reports together, and we really appreciate that he did a fine job on getting this stuff done. Big packet. And that's all, but I'll be right back for the PG&E tree removal presentation unless you have other announcements.
Thank you, Director. Anyone from the commission with an announcement that was not planned, and from our forester? Any? No? Well, then why don't we go ahead and, I don't know, do I need to open the announcements up for public comment? I didn't think so. Okay, thanks. Extraordinary business then is next on our agenda. We have one piece to consider, the PG&E tree removal incidents, the vegetation management procedures, and possible mitigation. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so much for a break. Okay, let's see. Hopefully you got a chance to review a report. In a moment, I'll be introducing our representatives from PG&E, but I'll get this kicked off and turn it over to them. So a little bit of background. Certainly, I wanted to start off by saying PG&E and the city have had a great working relationship for many, many years, both the gas and electric side of the house. So we do have a good collaborative working relationship by and large, day to day. PG&E is required by the California Public Utilities Commission to maintain clearance around their power lines, for safety reasons. The city cannot, we do not issue permits for them to do their line clearance, pruning, and tree removal, and we cannot deny a permit. But the procedure, we do have procedures in place, and they're followed so that their proposed work is coordinated with the city in advance. So we know what they're going to do. We give them a green light, and everything runs smooth. Although at the end of August, we did have a glitch. So I guess it was late August, we had 2 pine trees on Monteverde and 1 cypress tree on Scenic that were cut by PG&E's contractor before the city forester was notified. That's unusual. We usually notify well in advance. At the same time, there were 5 trees that were cut along Santa Rita, but the city was aware of this in advance. We did get blessing. We did notify. Sarah marked out the trees in advance. But to the community at large, they saw the 5 trees, the 2 and the 1. They saw 8 trees go down all at the same time. So there was a lot of community concern, controversy. It made it the front page of the Carmel Pine Cone. Someone even complained anonymously to the California Coastal Commission that the city was, quote, cutting down all the trees. So, a little interesting bit there. So in September, the Coastal Commission their enforcement office did an investigation. We met with them. They asked us questions. They met with the forester and I. And the interview went very well. They certainly identified no wrongdoing on the part of the city. The enforcement officer wrote us a letter the next morning. An excerpt is in your packet. It was kind of like, all is good. They did want to point out, though, that unlike what we said that, well, we don't really have any control of what PG&E does. They did point out that we are a coastal community. The whole city is in the coastal zone. Therefore, we're guided by the Coastal Act and our local coastal program, which allows us certain, not unlimited powers, but certain powers over PG&E, at least in terms of what we like to call mitigation. So I think what we need to do is to be reasonable. What is reasonable mitigation? So what I'd like to do is turn over the presentation over to PG&E. I'll come back, I'll talk more about what was reasonable mitigation, what may not be reasonable mitigation. But again, this is just to get the ball rolling. We're not going to make final decisions tonight. Just get the discussion started on what should be the practice going forward. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Scott Carlton, who's the PG&E Vegetation Program Manager, and Alexandra Baldwin, who's the Vegetation Project Manager. They'll make a brief presentation about their vegetation management program, what their procedures are, kind of a snippet of what happened in August and how we could do better going forward. Then I'll come back and we'll talk about a little bit about mitigation. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Scott and Alexandra.
Thank you.
Hello there.
Okay.
My name's Scott Carlton, and I'm a supervising vegetation program manager. I manage all of Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito counties. And this is
Alexandra Baldwin, Senior Vegetation Program Manager, and I oversee our routine maintenance projects in Monterey and San Benito County.
so. I'm sure you guys are no stranger to PG&E. Every time you flip a light on, you know, or turn your gas stove on, that's our doing. In order for us to be able to provide that service, there's a lot of natural growing, natural issues that we have to take care of in order for that electricity and gas to get from, you know, point A to point Z. We have about 100,000 miles of distribution line across our service territory that we have to manage annually. We also have a mid-cycle. I'm just speaking from a vegetation standpoint, not everything else that PG&E does with regards to fixing the poles and fixing cross arms, establishing new business. I'm just here strictly to speak on with regards to vegetation. Here and throughout our whole service territory, we patrol our lines once a year, looking for any trees that have the potential to grow into our lines, or for any trees that are off our right-of-way that are dead, have defects, showing signs of decline that make them more likely to fall into the power lines. And that could be anywhere from right in the right-of-way or 80 feet off the right-of-way. Because of the drought conditions that we've had in California over the last 10 years, we developed a mid-cycle program as well, which sends our foresters out after 6 months of each annual inspection, just looking for drought-stricken trees that may have died since the last inspection took place. So not only do we have those operational components taking place, we also have a lot of quality control happening. Got work verifiers and quality verifiers going out after our inspections are done to make sure the right trees are being identified and marked. And then we also have those same people go out after the tree work is done to make sure that the tree work was carried out accurately based off of what the inspectors put forth on their as part of their inspections. So did enough clearance get achieved? Did they mark the right trees? Did they cut the tree down far enough to where if it did fail, is it going to fail clear of the lines? As part of our customer notification, what we typically have easements that give us the legal right to do what we're doing, but communication is a key part of how we notify the public, and that's through either automated phone calls, door hangers, letters, phone calls, with just a cell phone, calling the customer phone number that is on file from when service has started, and then also in-person visits. Basically, the only work we're doing really is either trimming trees that have the potential to encroach on our minimum clearance requirement, and that could either be 2 clearances in local responsibility area where it's less of a wildfire risk, it's 18 inches is the minimum clearance. When we're in a high fire threat district, it's 4 feet. So anytime we're assessing a tree that is alive and growing, our inspectors ask themselves, does this tree have the potential to grow to that minimum clearance requirement? And that's all based off of species, whether the tree's being irrigated, how fast the tree's growing. And if the answer is yes, it gets marked for work. And we have a whole database, a whole platform that we use on iPads to collect all that tree data that has property owner information and prescription data. And then once we're done with our patrols, that gets generated to tree crews, and then they go out and do their work. So really there's 2 areas we're working. We're working in the high fire threat areas, and we're working in cities, in which case we're both regulated. In both those areas, we're regulated by the CPUC and CAL FIRE. They're also one of our regulators. If we do not achieve proper clearance, or vegetation is noticed to be within that minimum clearance, we're subject to notice of violations from our regulators, which could be, those penalties can vary depending on the severity of the issue. That pretty much covers it. We're not regulated or required to notify the public, but it's something we do as a courtesy to the public. Most of the time we have easements, granted easements, franchise easements, some cases prescriptive easements that give us essentially the legal right and responsibility to do our work. It's rare that we don't have an easement to do our work. So we're not required by law to notify, but we do, because we want customers to understand what we're doing, and we don't want to surprise people by having one of our contractor trucks just show up out of the blue and start cutting a tree. But as I said, most of the trees we cut, 99.9%, are green, healthy trees that are near our lines, that are putting up growth up towards the wires. So we don't want trees growing up into our lines and making contact and creating a spark. We also don't want unhealthy trees, dead trees off the right-of-way during a wind event, catching wind and falling over and crashing down and destroying the lines, causing outages and fires and ignitions. The situation here in Carmel was our foresters identified some trees that were in decline, had some various defects. Try not to get too technical in the arboriculture terms, but basically some defects that would make them more prone to failure than just your regular tree that has one single stem. Sometimes trees that have multiple stems coming out of a single base have what's we refer to as included bark, and that's a tree defect that makes a tree more prone to failure. All of these trees that we mark for removal have some sort of defect in them. Our vegetation program is ratepayer funded. Every time we feel we need more money to do that, we go before the CPUC as part of a rate case, and we get basically approval to raise our rates so that we can afford to pay for vegetation management. The serving electricity and gas isn't really a profitable thing for our company. It's just it's a duty we have to serve. Regardless of where people live, we have a duty to serve. The situation here, we have land planners and environmentalists that we submit our work to when we're doing work within the coastal zone. We understand that the Coastal Act we're subject to. It's a state act, state regulation, but they don't really manage it themselves. They have what are called LPZs, and local jurisdictions have the ability to basically carry out the Coastal Act on the Coastal Commission's behalf. And we have specialists that help us navigate that process whenever we identify trees that are within the coastal zone. Sarah has been great to work with. She usually interfaces with one of our land planners after they do a screening to determine, first off, verify that we're in the coastal zone, and then verify that the work we're doing wouldn't trigger a coastal development permit. Usually it doesn't, because it's just usually a tree here, tree there that we're cutting. Coastal development permits are usually for like big developments. You know, somebody wants to build a strip mall along the coast. That's really what that is designed for. It's not really designed to cover utilities keeping their line safe, but nevertheless, we abide by it. And this was a situation where, I mean, we just have an overabundance of communication with Sarah and other city foresters, city staff when we're working in cities, counties, state parks. And for whatever reason, this one, I don't know if there was just a miscommunication in the package of work that our land planner was putting together, but for whatever reason, this specific tree, Sarah wasn't notified on. I think every other tree we've cut or trimmed, we've always been good with coordinating with Sarah. In fact, we've partnered on several jobs where the tree may not be an issue for us, but it's in too close of proximity for Sarah's crews to do the work. Our crews being line clearance trained and line clearance certified, we've gone out and done work that's within 10 feet of the lines so that a non-line clearance tree trimmer can come out and safely finish the work. We've done that several times. So I feel like we have a good partnership and relationship with Sarah and pretty much every other city, county we work with. But this specific incident just seemed to have gotten away from us. And I think at the end of the day, I don't want to speak for you, Sarah, but I think you agreed that the tree was problematic, and you probably would have been fine doing the work had you known about it, but this was just a slip up. We were, in good faith, trying to get our work done and trying to protect the public. One other thing we do, I'll just say again, just to kind of defend the work we do. In most cases, sometimes PG&E owns property out there where the lines are crisscrossing the public lands, but primarily it's easements. We don't own the land. We don't own the trees that we're cutting. So it's not. We don't work off the assumption that the property owners of the trees don't want the trees. We cut them into manageable lengths and leave them for the property owner. It's their tree, and we assume that they want to keep their tree. The only time we proactively haul material is if we would be leaving it in a water course, or leaving it in a drainage, or in the middle of a road, or on a sidewalk. They're for safety or environmental reasons are the only times we just, as a good faith effort, take the log with us so that we're not leaving a hazard for somebody. However, there have been times where Sarah has acknowledged that this is a lot of wood material. Can you guys take it with you? Sure. In which case we've brought grapple trucks in and heavy equipment to be able to take these logs and put them on trucks and get them out of here, because most of the time the public doesn't want them. That is also not a requirement of us. It's a service that we provide, knowing that it's a hardship when we cut sometimes a dead 34-inch diameter pine tree on somebody's house, that for somebody that can't really physically process that kind of material. We're set up for it. Most residents aren't. So that's another service that we provide that's not a requirement of us. That's kind of everything in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but I could go on. Alex and I could go on for hours. We're very passionate about what we do, and we've been doing it for a long time. And we'd be happy to keep talking, but I know you have other items and you perhaps maybe questions for us. I want to make sure we leave time for.
Got it. Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate that, and Alex as well. I'll open it up to the commission. Sorry?
Mr. Chair, let me make a few concluding remarks and then open up for questions, please.
Please. Thanks.
You have a chair. Thank you. Good job. Want to talk a little bit about the mitigation, some of the things that Scott mentioned. It is true that we have a great partnership. They have helped us with line clearance because our city staff does not have the certifications for line clearance, so that has been helpful. It is true that with some of like those larger jobs, they haul away the wood for us, which is great. Some of the smaller jobs, Public Works can pick that up too, so that's not really been a problem. It's my understanding that in years past, they would cut the trees and leave what we call affectionately the totem poles. If you drive around town, you'll see evidence of old totem poles. And many of the times there's communication line, cable TV line that's stuck on the pole. But what they've done for the city of Carmel is they cut the trees down to the stumps. That's kind of mitigation right there. So they're helping us. It's certainly very helpful when it's a dead tree or diseased tree or unsafe tree, that's the city-owned tree that they're removing. Hallelujah. Let them have it. So really, I think mitigation might only be in the smaller subset of cases where our forester says, you know what, can't you just prune this? Yes, of course we want to be safe. We're all on the same side for that. But can't you just prune this? And maybe if they feel that they have to remove it, perhaps there's mitigation. Perhaps there's planting one tree in its place. Mr. Carlton did offer very graciously at our next Arbor Day event, they can come out and help us plant a bunch of trees or something like that. So they're willing to help to some extent. And of course, if we, being extreme, if we were to say, gosh, you got to plant 55 trees for every tree you remove, then our rates go up. We don't want that either. So we have to find what we call reasonable compromise, reasonable mitigation, if any, and maybe there's already sufficient mitigation. What I'm trying to do is get the conversation started in this forum. We're not like I said earlier, we're not going to make a final decision today. But I just want to get your feedback, so when we have ongoing conversations with our friends at PG&E, we kind of see if we can come up to some kind of reasonable decision, compromise, or whatever. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Got it. Thank you. I think first off, speaking on behalf of the commission, we appreciate the fact that PG&E has come here to speak to this issue. No doubt it made the paper. There was some concern around the city, but I'm sure everyone here agrees that we appreciate the work that PG&E does to keep this community safe, and certainly appreciate the fact that there's a good working relationship with the city, as you've detailed on both sides. And it's very exciting to hear that they want to participate in Arbor Day. I'm sure that our forester loves to hear that. That's great news. I'll hand it over to other commissioners if you have some questions for either the director or for the PG&E representatives before making any final comments. So, Commissioner Sowers.
I just, again, just from an overview standpoint, I think given the amount of effort and energy that is carried on by both Public Works and the Forest and Beach Commission to try and keep our tree and forest in as healthy state as possible, I can't underemphasize, I think, the importance between the coordination between PG&E and the city is really, really key. I mean, I think that if there's any way to have a process and procedure in place where the city can get oversight of what PG&E is doing in the city in regards to trees, so that our forester or Public Works staff can get a review before any cutting is happening. Whatever we could do to enhance and enforce that in a more proactive way, because I do believe beyond just the trees that were damaged on Monteverde and down on San Antonio. I mean, I've had a tree in my neighborhood that was impacted, and luckily I called Sarah and she came over and we looked at it. So, I mean, there are cases probably that Sarah doesn't even get visibility to, and the only way that the city would even get notified on that is if a neighbor called the city or made a comment about something going on with the trees. So again, the emphasis as a Forest and Beach Commissioner would be whatever we can do to coordinate in a more tight way with PG&E so that the forester or the Public Works Department can get visibility before the tree cutting goes on, would be my 2 cents on tightening it up as best possible.
I would like to add that we have a process. This was just one case where one list fell through the cracks. So up until that's one case, this is the only list I haven't gotten. So I'm able to review the trees ahead of time, and I post that yellow placard on the trees. So if anybody has any question about why PG&E is going to remove it, that phone number is present. This was just one oversight, one list that fell through the cracks.
Commissioner,
And if I may, just kind of piggyback on Forester's comments, going forward, both the vegetation management and their permit team are going to send us the same list. So it's just in case one person's out or forgets or whatever, we'll have a redundant case. So we do have like a backup plan now, so we'll get 2 lists, and that's fine. We can easily throw one out, but at least we'll for sure get one if one fails to show up.
But one thing I might add is that I know that the list is for just tree removals, or would it have to deal with topping and cutting? So it's all
of it.
issues related to any trees that are going to be,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
great, thank you.
Commissioner Rosowski?
I think that's, being new to the commission, it was when we had the opportunity to briefly speak about this in your office. I think I would just like to add that I think the attention to really understand what happened and bringing PG&E to this meeting is really fantastic, that there's been a thorough analysis of what happened and where to go forward. It sounds like this was one that slipped through the cracks, and that based on the amount of mutual goodwill that I've heard described from both the city, Sarah, you, and PG&E, I would just caution against seeking mitigations that have the potential to negatively impact that goodwill, which seems to be a basis for so much great work in our city.
Commissioner Burling? Nothing? Commissioner Mickey? Nothing? Well, yeah, I would comment to both Commissioner Sowers and Commissioner Rosowski's, Rosowski, did I get it? Yeah, I'll get it. Statements. I think the process, it sounds as if it was already addressed, and no doubt it feels like it was something that just happened to, miss the mark. And as far as a conversation around the mitigation, I mean, honestly, I'm not hearing from the commission that this is something that we need to spend some time on. I don't think there's enough, at least that's been presented to us, that would, for at least from my perspective anyway, to make this an agenda item for us going forward. I don't think that's necessary. So
Great.
That's my take.
Appreciate your feedback.
Should I open that up at all to?
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be appropriate.
Got it. So then at this point, I will open up to public comment this extraordinary business. First, I'll look to the chambers to see if there's anyone in the chambers that wishes to speak to this, has a comment about it. I'm not seeing anyone come forward, and then so I'll go ahead and turn that over to those of you that are participating online. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment regarding this extraordinary business? Not seeing anyone here. Yvette, are you?
I don't see anybody's hands raised at this time.
Got it. Then we'll go ahead and move along, and let's get into the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussion or independent action. Members of the commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of commission discussion and/or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. The first piece on our consent agenda is to approve the August 11th, 2022 meeting minutes.
I second that motion.
Are you
I second.
starting it?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Second.
Okay. So it was Commissioner Sowers made the motion of that, and then Commissioner Burling who seconded it.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Burling.
Let's see. What?
She's asking, we're doing the roll call
We're doing it.
Oh, you're doing the roll call.
for,
Do you have discussion?
Didn't we do the roll call already?
It's a yay or nay.
this is a yay or nay for
Here.
the motion that was just made.
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay, yes.
for reviewing the minutes. If,
I just had one question.
okay.
It just,
Yeah.
just prior to, for discussion, I just have a question to any of the commissioners that were at the last meeting, if they could just verify that they felt the minutes reflected accurately what occurred in that meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
I think that's what we're
I've
doing.
reviewed it,
That's what
so,
we're
yeah. Okay, great. So we had a motion again, it's been seconded, and then Yvette, maybe if we could start
And
over, please, with our roll call of yeas or nays.
Yes. Commissioner Burling,
yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes?
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is passed.
Thank you. Then we will move into public hearings. And it looks like the first of our public hearings is the release of a stop work order at 9th Avenue 2 northeast of Lincoln Street. I'll go ahead and turn that over to our forester.
And I will turn on the microphone. So this is a pine in the public right-of-way located on 9th Avenue, 2 northeast of Lincoln. I was alerted by a building inspector that some damage had been done to this pine tree in question. Here you can see the damage. Roots were cut in order to install some footings for a garden wall. I issued a stop work order because the roots that were cut are bigger than the size outlined in the city code. We had the tree appraised by a third-party independent consulting arborist, and they determined that the tree lost value of about $2,700. So to lift the stop work order, I'm recommending that the commission ask the property owner, the Rosemary Montgomery Trust, to pay the city the investigation fee for the stop work order and the typical double the permit application fee, plus the value of the tree that was lost after the damage was done, and also reimburse the city for the third-party appraisal. So the total would be $4,473.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for our forester about what she has presented?
The only question I had, and again, just in fairness to the property owner and a resident of the city, is it looks like the stop order was dated on July 29th of 2022, and we're not getting back to the property owner until today's meeting, and that seems like a long bit of time. I know obviously we didn't have last month's meeting, so I am a little concerned that we're not getting timely back on, potential stop work order on a client, and whether there's some give back we could give on this as far as fee issues, given the fact that it's taken so long to respond back to the property owner.
Got it. So are you
I'm
asking our
that of
forester
our
about
forester whether that's possible.
That's your decision.
Right. So, but first of all, it sounds like you're asking whether or not the date is correct of the stop work order?
Well, no, I said the date's listed here as far as the stop work order was issued on July 29th.
Okay. So I think we'll have an opportunity to bring that back to discussion once we hear from everyone. But anyway, if there's are there any other questions about what's been presented by the forester? No, then I imagine
I have a question.
Oh, please. Thank you.
My question is,
Push the button.
okay, I'm sorry. My question is sort of like Brian's in that, can we take any of the fees that are being charged and not assess those? For example, can we decide to give the fees less the devaluing of the tree? Or is it an all-in-one? I don't know if that's just up to us, or if there's any feedback from you, Sarah.
If I may, the commission has the discretion to assess any amount up to that amount.
Okay.
no other questions. Then I imagine, is the applicant here? And was the applicant here would like to make a statement at all?
I believe I may have seen the applicant online.
Okay. Let's see. Let's give them a minute to see if they can.
I believe the Rosemary. Are you the Rosemary Montgomery Trust? There it goes.
Hello there, Rosemary. If you'd like to make a statement, we'd be happy to hear from you. You've got your mute off, so that's the first step. Good job. Let's give her a few more seconds here to figure it out. Well, I'm going to imagine that even though she's turned her microphone off mute, that she doesn't care to speak at this point. I'll allow for her to chime back in if she cares to, but I think then I'd open this up for public comment. And then again, we can come back to you, Rosemary, if you would care to make a statement. Is there anyone here in the chambers that would like to comment on this particular release of the stop work order? Doesn't look like it from our chamber. Then anyone online that would care to make a comment? It doesn't look like it. Yvette, does it?
I don't see any hands raised either.
Yep.
And I did send Rosemary a direct message to ask her that we can't hear her. She just replied back, I'm trying to unmute, but I don't have a comment at this time.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you for that, Yvette. Appreciate it. Then I'll go ahead and close the comment period and bring it back to the commission for discussion. So this is a great opportunity for each of you to weigh in on the recommendation from the forester and let's come to a conclusion on this. So I'll open up the floor to whoever would like to chime in.
Well, Sarah, you said that it probably wouldn't damage the tree very much.
It has damaged the tree, and it does make the tree more susceptible to attracting detrimental insects. However, I don't feel at this time that the tree is going to rapidly decline. It may, but at this time, it's still pretty vigorous. The foliage looks good, and the condition hasn't changed much.
How long ago were those cuts made, do we know?
Yeah, so I initially saw it at the time that the stop work order was issued at the end of July.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I just have a point of, from a precedent standpoint, is this what you're proposing typical of what would, the components of the fines typical of what you would typically assess for this type of action?
Yes. So the fees, the stop work order investigation fee, as well as the permit application fees are pretty much standard. The planning department uses the same methodology, and I do typically offer up a third-party appraised value of the tree. I like to use a consulting arborist. I very plainly say I need an appraisal on this tree. I don't give them much more information than that so that I get a fair and accurate appraisal. So yes, this is typical.
You know, just I guess my 2 cents on this is that I would, given that the tree seems to be fine right now, and I think we're being a little excessive on both the change in the appraised value of the tree when we have no idea whether it's really damaged in a way that's going to have an impact on the tree coming down, as well as, again, my second point is I think we're a little late getting back to a stop work order on a project they're trying to get completed. And my suggestion was maybe we cut the late fee on the tree permit in half. So my suggestion would be that we reduce or eliminate the appraisal value and reduce the tree permit penalty in half.
I would agree with the appraisal value. I don't know how customary that the permit portion of it is, but I would agree that the appraised value, since we don't know if it's damaged, should be removed.
You don't think it should be removed?
Pardon me?
You don't think, or you do think it should be removed?
I do think it should be. I don't think that we should assess them a devaluation of the tree because we don't know that the tree is damaged.
Just one point to make clear is this is a public right-of-way tree, so it is a city asset and city property.
Did you have another comment?
Just a question as to whether an additional opinion on the depreciation value would be helpful here or not. This isn't, the intent is not to continue to delay getting back to the homeowner, but maybe to verify what the penalty should be for the depreciated value in the future. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I guess the question I have is the one thing, while I completely agree that timeliness to the homeowner is really important, that we want to be timely, I want to be careful that we don't set a precedent of reducing fees that could potentially trigger, other violations, right? I just want to be careful about if we have a formula, adjustments we make to that subjectively.
in terms of the devaluation, just
No, I think she's,
I think we can make decisions each time as it goes on, and there doesn't seem to be much carryover. I think your idea is good, Brian, so frankly.
I mean, we do represent the residents here in the city, so I'm just trying to be sensitive when we, as a commission, the city, are a little behind the gun, no fault of our own, but just, as a commission, we have a responsibility to reply back quickly to our residents and stop work orders, stop the work at a project, and that's a concern.
so I guess sorry,
Go ahead.
I haven't had a chance to speak to it, but if you'd like to.
Go ahead.
So from the perspective of this particular instance, the damage was done. There was no permit pulled to do this. There is damage to the tree. There's a cost to the investigation that is a formula that's worked out. There's obviously a fixed cost for the assessment by the arborist. Those are real costs to the city. And as the forester mentioned, this is an asset. Now, whether or not you might look at it as not exactly the best asset in the city could be open for debate for sure, because it's underneath some wires and has had some pretty interesting butchering. Not from PG&E guys, I see they're not here.
They left.
Yeah, exactly. And I would tend to lean towards not deviating from our standard practice. I do think, although I respect the notion that it's, every instance stands on its own, we do establish practices for a reason, and I think that regardless of the fact that unfortunately we couldn't get to this until now, I feel like that if we step out of line, then we're setting a different precedent, and I would not want to do that. That wouldn't be the way I could go. If the only thing I suppose I'd be interested in, or I would consider, would be not doubling the tree permit fee, because there is real damage done to the tree. There has been an assessment done. It's the standard practice of how we look at that assessment, that you and I might look at that tree and say, hey, the tree looks healthy. These roots that were over 4 inches in diameter were cut, but the tree's gonna be fine. I think that's really that's out of our, kind of our realm. That's why we have the experts come in,
And
so.
that's what she said.
So if it were me, I would make a motion to follow the recommendation of the forester in this instance, except for, I wouldn't double the tree permit fee. I would just leave it as its original amount, and that would be essentially, I suppose, the hat in hand to the owners for the delay in addressing this. That's what I would like to make a motion for, but you guys have, there's no second for it, then a different motion needs to be made.
Sarah, I have another question. When we were at the site, I had asked you if you felt this would impact the tree in a way that you felt that it would be a detrimental thing, and it was my understanding that you said no. So can I get some just clarification on that?
Yeah, when I say no, I look at it from a risk standpoint. The damage that was done, I don't believe structurally impacted the tree enough to tip it into the point of being clear and present danger. Anytime any tissue is cut, it damages the tree, and you have a potential for some sort of disease or insect to be attracted to the tree. I do not think, my professional opinion, that the roots being severed that I was able to see are going to cause the tree to go into decline.
Thank you.
So another possibility would be having the depreciation value, since it's really not apparently too bad in the, at this point.
Are you suggesting as an alternative to the motion?
Well, we could add it to what JC has suggested as a possibility. So it would reduce it by 2 halves of 2 parts there.
Well, go ahead and you can make a friendly amendment to the motion if you'd like, or you could just make a brand new motion altogether and get a second there.
What was your suggestion? I'm still confused.
Since the depreciation isn't too clear, to make it half of what the depreciation cost is here, which one is it? 2,700.
Oh, half that cost?
Uh-huh. So half of that and half of the, what was the one you said?
The doubling of the permit fee.
So singling that, yeah.
So are you
Is that your
amending
So I
the
would
motion?
add that half of the depreciation cost to what JC's.
So Yvette, the Commissioner Burling would need to make a friendly amendment to my motion. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
But
Director.
you as the originator would have to agree to accept that amendment.
Got it. So is that what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm willing to accept that, sure.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, well, we have a,
Or is that the third?
I'll third it.
do we need to go
Yvette's
over
gotta
that with
go.
you, Yvette?
Okay, so let me just get this clear. So JC made the motion and Sarah seconded it.
Sarah
Correct.
actually
Sarah
made a
actually
friendly
did.
amendment,
That's
which
friendly.
I
Okay.
accepted. And then it's Commissioner Kelly, who,
That's fine.
that's fine.
That's fine.
It was JC and Sarah, so
Usually just copy.
it kind of went along that way, so. She actually seconded it.
Okay. All right, that was confusing, but anyway. Okay, I'll go ahead and take a roll call. Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you, the motion is passed.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, then let's move on to the second release of a stop work order at San Carlos Street 4, southeast of 7th Avenue, turning it over again to our forester.
Which one is it? San Carlos.
I am not on again. Okay. So this stop work order was issued to the Flint Herman project. on San Carlos 4 southeast of 7th Avenue. When I visited the site, there was an open trench, roots exposed, roots cut in excess of 4 inches in diameter, which requires a permit per code. However, I allowed the contractor to continue work on the site because it was a very large excavation in a sidewalk, as well as the excavation for the repair of utility. So in this case, the lifting of the stop work order is a condition of receiving their certificate of occupancy. So the 2 city trees that were damaged in this case were smaller trees, a maple, and we have it listed as an elm, but it's actually a Peruvian pepper tree. They're younger trees, they're pretty vigorous, they're the type of tree that can tolerate damage to the root system. So in this case, I'm only recommending the stop work order investigation fee and the doubling of the tree pruning application.
Okay, thank you, Forrester. Commissioners, do you have any questions pertaining to what was just presented by our forester? No? And then is the applicant present and would care to make a statement?
I am the contractor and I'm representing the applicant. I've done, hey, Justin Hastings with Hastings Construction. I've done hundreds of jobs in Carmel, and this is my first incident with the forester, other than working with her to get trees pruned or cut or removed through the process. I apologize for this incident. I called her and apologized when I found out that this incident had occurred with my staff. We had training with my staff to address this issue. I also immediately called the forester that we used to make sure that the trees were not damaged, which was Frank Ono. Apparently he represents you guys and only could say that the trees would most likely not have damage. I understand that there is some work and expense associated with this with the forestry department, and I appreciate the ability to continue with the project as it was definitely necessary. I do believe these roots would have needed to have been removed just due to the fact that they were impacting the excavation. They were impacting the sidewalk and raising the sidewalk, but I will rely on the commission's recommendations and whatever is necessary to resolve the issue.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Hastings? No, it doesn't look like it. Then I'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public either here in chambers that would care to make a comment? Doesn't look like it here in the chambers. And anyone online? It looks like we've got some new participants. I don't see any hands coming up. Yvette, do you?
I don't see any hands either.
Okay, well then I'll go ahead and close the public comment section, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who would like to lead this off?
I just have one question for you, Sarah. And this is just for learning purposes, being new on the commission. So in this instance, like, why would there be no assessment of like damage or is it because they're on private property and not public asset?
No, these were public right-of-way trees.
Okay.
However, because of their age and their type, the damage is very, it's minimal. It's not going to really adversely impact those 2 trees.
Okay, so that you're saying that the potential degree to which these trees would be damaged is low enough that it didn't trigger you to have an independent assessment of loss of value, like in the other case.
Yes,
correct?
that was
Okay.
my judgment call at the
Okay.
time.
Any other comments from the commission at all?
No.
Seems pretty straightforward to me. I would note that appreciated Justin Hastings coming on and acknowledging what took place, also speaking to the fact that that he has training in place, and I imagine he readdressed that, so thank you for that. I would make a motion to accept the recommendation of the forester.
I second that. Good, you do.
Looks like, I don't know, I think Commissioner Burling got that one, Yvette.
I think you did.
Okay, I got that one. All right, Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner McKee,
Yes.
Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you, the motion is passed.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up on public hearings for us would be to approve or deny the removal of one oak tree and one acacia tree at Junipero Street 6, northeast of 8th Avenue. Again, I turn this over to Forester Sarah.
Thank you. I have the mic on this time. Good job. So in this case, we're dealing with an addition to a home on Junipero, which is 6 northeast of 8th Avenue. The story poles are up at this location, and based on the layout of the addition and the roof line of the proposed addition, the applicant is asking to remove an existing coast live oak. I have asked that the floor plan be changed and the pitch of the roof line to be altered to accommodate the preservation of that tree. Did have a third-party consulting arborist take a look at that tree as well, and we both agree that construction that close to the tree and its critical root zone could be very detrimental to the tree. I have asked that the building be, the foundation be put on piers and or cantilevered close to that oak tree, but it's more so for the preventing impact to a very large Monterey pine that is within the footprint there too. So I believe the builder is here today and he can speak to those potential changes. Also, they're requesting the removal of an acacia tree also on the property. You can see it here next to the large pine. It's not on our desired species list and can be invasive, so I would recommend to approve the removal of the acacia, deny the removal of the oak tree, and require that 2 upper canopy trees be planted.
Thank you, Forester Sarah. Commissioners, do you have any questions pertaining to the information presented by the forester?
I have a question, Sarah. Why 2 upper canopy trees as opposed to 1?
That would align with the density recommendations as outlined in the code.
Is there room for 2?
Yes.
When we were there?
Yes.
Didn't see that. Where would the 2 be? Do you remember?
That would depend on their landscape design and the intent of the plant material that they place around the structure. Right now, the space would be in the front setback of the lot.
Any other questions to Forester? Yes?
I have a
Sarah.
question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'd go with the hands maybe.
Go ahead.
So if they choose to remove the acacia, they have to replace it with 2 upper canopy? Is that my understanding?
That's the recommendation that's outlined in the code. So that recommendation is triggered anytime I do a preliminary site assessment for a building project. So that's just the recommendation.
So recommendation is a suggestion.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
even if there was not an application to remove a tree on a property, during the site assessment phase, that recommendation is spelled out to meet the density.
But just to clarify, it's a recommendation, not a requirement.
Correct. That is how it is phrased in the code.
Okay. And so the property presently has 1 upper canopy tree and 5 lower canopy trees, so.
Correct.
Okay, so will and you're saying the acacia doesn't count in that, or is it considered a lower canopy?
The acacia would be considered a lower canopy tree, but they're proposing to remove it.
Right, so they would go from 1 and 5 to 1 and 4.
Correct.
With your recommendation, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they would go to 3 and 4, right?
Well, that.
If the recommendation is to add 2 upper canopies?
Correct, if they chose to follow the suggestion. Yeah.
Well, it's whether we,
Right.
if we vote on it, then it's no longer just a suggestion.
Right.
Was that right? Sarah, is that the correct number, right? Because you've noted on this that there is, as Commissioner Kelly was saying, 1 upper canopy and 5 lower canopy currently. If they remove if it goes so that they remove the acacia, then there would be 4 lower canopy, and you're recommending 2 additional.
No, there would be 3. If the acacia was removed, there would be 3 lower canopy trees remaining and 1 upper canopy tree.
Oh, I thought it said there were 4 lower canopy in the report.
Oh, it says 5 right here, right?
Yeah, 5, yeah.
This lot is 3,821 square feet and currently has 1 upper canopy and 5 lower canopy trees.
Yeah,
Last sentence on the page there.
Am I on the wrong page?
that's what I was on.
I think that is an error.
Okay, well, regardless, we weren't addressing the lower canopy here. We were addressing the upper canopy, and the question was the additional 2 would make for 3.
So the way it stands right now, I don't have all the documentation in front of me, but trees 1 and 2 are not on the property. They'd be adjacent, most likely in the right-of-way.
Are they upper canopy or
6
lower
and
canopy?
7 also are not on the lot. So tree number 3 is upper, tree number 4 is the lower acacia, tree number 5 is a lower oak, tree number 8 is a multi-stemmed lower canopy oak, and tree number 9 is also a lower canopy oak. So on the property proper, if the acacia is gone, there are 3 lower canopy trees and 1 upper canopy tree.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for clarification.
I would rather see us, if we request any upper canopy, because
We'll hold that. We're asking just questions about what she's presenting. So then, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, I have another question, and I'd like to just repeat it, but I had asked you on the site as well. If the builder were to have the tree portion that is in the way of the roof line cut, I believe you mentioned that was about 1/3 of the foliage, would it survive if we were to not allow them to remove the entire tree? Would that pruning?
we weren't.
It depends on the duration of time and other factors that are outside of the property owner's control. It would be a large pruning wound, which would hasten the decline of the tree. Typically, a pruning dose of a mature tree is no more than 25% of the canopy to be removed. So that would go over that threshold.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question for Sarah. Do you have a recommendation where you think the additional upper canopy trees might be appropriate?
Again, they would most likely need to be planted in the front setback, considering the proposed addition and deck material. So they would be in the front setback.
So I have a question, Sarah. What are the 2 on the city property in front, upper canopy or lower canopy?
Oh, I'm having to get in my Wayback Machine here. 1 second, and I'll be able to tell you.
That's not like
here.
pictures.
1, 2, 3. That would be, it's looking like one is an acacia and one is a coast live oak.
What'd you say?
An acacia and a coast live oak. So in the backyard is the Monterey pine and the acacia, and there's a total of 1, 2, 3. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coast live oaks that were evaluated adjacent to the property and on the property proper.
Okay, thanks. If there's no more questions for the material presented by the forester, why don't we have the applicant speak? So is the applicant here in chambers?
I believe we have the builder here.
Great. If you wouldn't mind coming up to the mic, thanks.
Take my mask off?
You're supposed to leave it on.
Okay, I didn't know if it comes through here.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Vince Bruno. I'm the contractor representing the Junipero Street LLC. And the owner's concern is the oak tree coming, the one that's leaning to the right. It's coming through the deck that we're proposing in the back and going through our overhang. That's the one they want to take out and plant 2 in either the back side yard or in the front. And it's a healthy tree, according to Sarah, so, but we've been trying to kind of either get rid of it and plant 2 more, or possibly even lower the house to let that tree kind of get through, if that's an option.
Okay.
So just to clarify, I think what you're saying is that the finished floor height of the addition could be lowered and potentially the pitch of the roof could be changed.
Yeah,
to accommodate
the walls could be lower, and we could just get that canopy to fit right through there. But we also have the problem leaning into the house and the back deck, because we have to build, such a small area now. The people's access and their back deck, where they're going to use most of the time, is going to be very limited.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ben? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Open that up to any public comment regarding this request to remove this oak. Is there anyone, doesn't look like anyone in the chambers is stepping forward. Anyone online care to make a public comment? I see a hand up there.
It's for Evan.
Yep.
Evan Cart.
Great. Hello, Evan.
Yeah, I'm the project planner on it. I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm here and available for questions on the planning side if any questions come up.
Okay, great. Thank you, Evan. Appreciate you letting us know that. Anyone else from the public? Doesn't appear. Yvette, do you see anyone else?
I don't see anyone else's hands raised at this time.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period and then bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who would like to lead off this discussion around this approval or denial?
So are these approved plans? Or is this a preliminary design study?
Now, as I remembered, I thought the gentleman that's the builder here told us that it's still in design phase. Is that accurate? Correct.
So it's gone through the concept design study. So there's still one more public hearing that needs to occur. So it's gone through one of the 2 planning commission hearings that are required. So there still is the opportunity for changes to be made.
Thanks, Evan.
Mr. Chair, could I make a comment perhaps for the newer commissioners? I mean, a big picture comment. beyond just this particular case.
Please.
Over the years past, there's been like the chicken and the egg issue about, do we go to the Forest and Beach Commission first and then to the Planning Commission, or Planning Commission first and the Forest and Beach Commission first? The development is an ongoing process, so we're not going to design the roof line today. What we're trying to, I guess, the Forest and Beach Commission is really here for the big picture items that's beyond the purview or authority of the city forester. So, for example, the commission's role usually is assess fines, approve a removal, approve a pruning, identify trees to be planted. When we get into the minutia of the pitch of the roof, the setback, exact location, there's still plans that are not done. Plans are going to be revised. The landscaping plan's going to happen. So it's an ongoing process that is typical in development, and the city forester, the city planner, building official, we're all very much involved in the ongoing process. So just wanted to make it clear that this is not all issues are resolved in this forum. This is really focusing on tree removal, yes, no, pruning, yes, no, replacing new trees, yes, no, that type of thing. Hopefully that narrows down the unlimited possible questions to what we're trying to accomplish today.
Thank you, Director. And not just the new commissioners appreciate that reminder, and so thank you. Additional discussion, commissioners, any additional comments here?
I don't know that we can make a decision on certain things if we don't know if the roof line is going to be brought down, because if the roof line can be brought down and that tree can be saved, the oak can be saved, I don't think we're in a position right now to make a decision on that.
The commission could say it's denied, do not remove the tree, and then the developer could revise the design and come back, or do something different. But you can certainly make the decision today to deny, or you could say I approve and then see what happens. But you could go either way.
Thank you.
Also, for the sake of the new commissioners, the coast live oaks are very intolerant of construction practices in town, from soil compaction issues to the severing of the fine root system. Anytime construction happens within the critical root zone of an oak, it typically will start to decline. And typically, from what I'm seeing, don't make it much past 5 years after construction damage. So just to point that out.
Got it. Well, I'll go ahead and make some comments here if no one else is prepared to. I think this is an absolutely lovely tree. It was quite healthy, and it looked vigorous. I really believe that we should deny the removal of the oak. It's fine that the acacia certainly is in poor health, and I would support the removal of that. And at the same time, I also value the character of our village, and acknowledging that we do have policy in place to keep that character. And I think when we have our forester making a recommendation about adding upper canopy, it's yes, it's policy for sure, but also I trust that she's looking at the property and identifying the right places, and I trust that will come together. So I would make the motion. In fact, I will make a motion to approve the recommendation made by the forester here, and I'm looking for a second.
I will second that.
So we have a first and a second, Yvette.
Okay, since I don't know our two commissioners, new commissioners' voices as of yet, I didn't see who said that.
Tamara, Mickey.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Burling?
No, I'd rather see one.
Commissioner Brzezowski? Commissioner Brzezowski?
I think I'm going to abstain on this one.
Commissioner Mickey?
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers?
Yes.
Chair Myers?
Yes. So that motion is approved.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. I was counting. Yes,
Just
the
making sure.
motion has passed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on in our public hearings. We have the approval or denial of the removal of one large Monterey pine at Lobo Street 5 northeast of 3rd Avenue. I'll turn it over to our forester for her report.
Thank you. Our applicant, Mr. Crudes, did I say that properly? Okay. Has applied to remove a large Monterey pine at the rear of the home. At this time, the condition of the tree is typical to the other Monterey pines of a similar age and size in the neighborhood. Upon visual inspection, there doesn't seem to be an overabundance of bark beetles. Also, there's there's deadwood in the tree that is not excessive. There is not any signs of recent construction or grade changes within the critical root zone of the tree. So considering that it is in typical condition with the rest of the neighborhood and doesn't seem to be in active decline, my recommendation is to deny the removal of the pine. However, if you choose to approve the removal of the pine, the recommendation per the code is to plant 2 additional upper canopy trees or pay the in lieu of fee of $800 for each of the 2 trees chosen to not be planted.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for our forester in regards to what she has just presented? No questions, then I believe we have a representative for the applicant.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Commission. Anthony Lombardo. I'm going to speak mercifully briefly this afternoon. I'm just here to introduce our forester and give a little bit of background. You know, in Carmel, we look at what I call the 3 Ds when it comes to these tree removals. Is it dead? Is it dying? Or is it dangerous? In this case, the tree, as we saw this afternoon, is clearly not dead. I would say it's, based on Mr. Belleci's report, it's definitely at the end of its life. It's at 75 to 80 years old, and that was pretty evident. Its limbs looked even worse than mine. And we have, however, the 3rd D is what we're here today about, because the tree is dangerous. And Mr. Belleci is not only our forester, but he holds an additional qualification, which he'll explain to you as what's called a qualified risk assessor for dangers created by trees. And his report, which I hope you've had an opportunity to review, concludes unequivocally that because the way this tree was grown and pruned, not by my client, but by prior owners, or probably by people who lived behind who wanted a view through the tree, it is a dangerous condition, and danger to not only my clients, but to the homes around it because of the height of the tree, the oversized limbs in the upper canopy, and what would happen, or the lack of any protection if they fell, or maybe I should say when they fall, because I don't think it's if. And as Sarah mentioned, and you saw today on your field trip, the site is very constrained. I don't think, based on the design of the house, which was originally built in 1945, and the drainage improvements that are required when the house was remodeled recently, that there's a place to put additional upper canopy trees on the site, so the applicant would be pleased to pay to have them planted somewhere else or pay the fee, whichever the city approves. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Blakey, and if you have any questions, the Credaces are here with me, and we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Forrester, Davis. My name is Joe Bellecci. I had the opportunity to meet you earlier at the site visit, and I do have an outline of my presentation that will help us to run it through fairly quickly. And I do have copies. Is that allowed? Sure. Perfect. I think that's 6. When I refer to the ISA, I'm referring to the International Society of Arboriculture. I am an ISA certified arborist since the early 90s. I have been qualified by the ISA as a risk assessor since 2016, and I requalified in 2021. My report with the photos is the attachment number 3 to the staff report. I know there's attachment 2 that's photos, but those aren't mine that I know of. But anyway, so the staff report, wanted to go over the steps in risk assessment. And I'll go over them quickly, and then we can go how they were applied. Number 1 is to observe the tree for defects affecting the likelihood of failure of the tree or a part of the tree. Then consider the presence of a target or targets. Consider the likelihood of failure. Consider the likelihood of impact on the target. Consider the likelihood of both failure and impact at the same time, and I can explain that a little bit later. Then consider the consequences of the failure, and then consider possible mitigation, and then rate the risk based on all those steps. So my findings were that tree parts that were most likely to fail are the large, heavy lateral limbs below the topping cut. There is the tree was topped at approximately 60 feet, and topping is a very destructive practice that results in decay and unnatural growth. And I'd refer you to California Government Code section 53067. It's quoted in my report, and it goes into the damage caused by topping trees, which is pretty unusual for the California State Legislature to get involved in tree trimming. But anyway, so the decay is present at the topping site. There's a photo in my report, and you can see that it has been topped. There is decay, and I could tell that when I viewed the tree the first time from the street, because it had no central leader above these huge limbs at the very top. And what happened is the limbs, after the topping, the limbs decided they wanted to take over the terminal roll of the trunk, and they grew unnaturally large and heavy. And also the University of California Western Tree Failure Database, California Tree Failure Program, lists Monterey pine as the first and second species in tree failure over the past, the two publications in 1994 and 2010 were the highest and the second highest reported tree failures in California. And within those failures, I do have a copy of that as well, if you would like. I think there's 6 of those. that within those failures, most of the failures were branches, not, we look at parts of the tree, the roots, the trunk, and the branches. Most of those failures were branches. And within those branch failures, most of the failures were with heavy lateral limbs, which is exactly what is at the very top of that tree. So based on those things, the failure risk is considered probable. Now, the target is identified as the Crowdace residence, and the neighboring residents to the north, and the occupants on those properties. The likelihood of impact on the target is high because the majority of the tree crown is over the Crowdace residence. Failure and impact is likely because the failure is probable and the likelihood of impact is high. And let me give you an example to kind of explain that. If the tree was not over a residence, let's say it was over a hiking trail, and the trail was occupied, maybe three people went by in an hour usually. Okay, so the danger of failure could still be high, but the danger of impact would bring down the risk because it's a very, very low chance that the failure would impact anybody, because there's only a person there for maybe a minute out of the hour. But in this case, the failure is high and the target is constant, so it's a very high risk tree. And then we go to the consequences of the failure would be very severe because of the extreme weight of the limbs and the lack of lower limbs to break the fall of the limbs from the top of the tree. It's about a 40-foot drop, and there's nothing to slow the momentum of those limbs, and so they likely result in tremendous damage to the residents and possible personal injury. And by the way, neither the topping nor the crown raising removal of all those limbs was done by the applicant. And further note is there's a common misconception that live limbs don't break and fall. Well, they do, and they cause more damage than when dead limbs fall because they're so much heavier. So based on the above factors, the tree risk was rated as high. And then we get to the question of mitigation. That's the word I was looking for, by the way. I don't know why. I worked on this and it just went out of my head. Anyway, so there is no actual reasonable method of mitigating this problem. You can't remove the at-risk branches or else you'd remove the whole crown of the tree, because that's all there are, is those long, heavy limbs. And you can't reduce enough weight by pruning to significantly reduce the risk of failure, lightening up those limbs without shocking the tree and attracting beetles. And you'd have to, if you tried that, you'd have to do either reduction pruning consisting of heading back the limbs, like cutting back the ends of the limbs, and that is similar to topping the trunk of the tree. It causes problems, and otherwise you'd have to remove the large laterals off the big limbs. And again, that would shock the tree and would attract beetles and still leave the end weight. And actually, neither one of those is realistic because all the weight is on the end, most of the weight is on the ends of the limb right now. So it's not going to work to take off the laterals off the big branches because there's not many until the very end. and you'd have to cut back the ends of the trees. Of the
Sir,
branches.
with all due respect, and thank you very much, you've obviously presented a very important qualified material. If you could wrap it up and I'll give you about another minute or two, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would just say that in conclusion, yeah, it's not that the tree is dead or that it's going to die tomorrow, but it is dangerous. And for the protection of the applicants and the public, I highly recommend removal. I could address Ms. Davis's comments, which were that there was the tree had plenty of foliage. Well, you saw the tree, and if you compare it to other trees, it's not that vigorous. It's thinning out. If you look at it from directly below, and I did not state that there was serious beetle damage in my report. All I did was say that beetle damage would come if they tried to mitigate the hazard by reduction pruning, and I included a photo of the current beetle activity to show that it is vulnerable to beetles. Okay, thank you very much.
No,
really
thank you. We
appreciate
appreciate it. Does anyone from the commission have any questions?
No, I do.
Great.
Is there, are you aware of any damage that this tree has caused to the current residents in the past couple of years?
I'm sorry?
Are you aware of any damage that this tree has caused to the residents in the past couple of years? Like, has there been any damage to date as a result of the tree?
As a result of this tree? Not that I'm aware of, no. The limbs are still there. Yeah. Okay.
Are there any other questions from the commission for the material presented? I had a question, and I probably would direct it to Mr. Lombardi on representing the clients. Obviously, this report presented by Joe is comprehensive in speaking to the dangerous piece specifically, and that he's referred to the occupants as one of the targets. I'm just curious if the applicants have made any statements to the effect that they are fearful themselves of harm happening to them. Is this something that's keeping them up at night? Is there any more information that they'd like to provide regarding their own personal feeling and safety?
There he is.
Well, I'm Chris Crowdis. I'm one of the owners. And yes, I mean, this started when I wanted to trim the tree, and a couple of tree services came in, Craig Spencer and John Lay, and they refused to climb up above it because of the damage that could be caused to the house just by having people directly above it on those limbs at the age of the tree. And that's what alerted me to an issue. You know, I at the time I thought, I just, like probably most of us, it's been there a long time. It hasn't caused any damage yet, but and I'll keep it trimmed. You know, every year I'll have somebody go up there and check it out just to make sure there's not a problem. But when and then we found out the recommendation and eventually hired Joe to look into it, and it's pretty scary. I mean, our living room and our kitchen are right underneath most of those branches, and that's where we spend most of the time in the house. And when it gets windy and you hear those branches moving and you can see them moving above the house, and it's a 95-foot tree, it's pretty scary. I mean, there have been a couple of nights I've had difficulty sleeping, but I felt that at least we've got this early enough to remedy the problem and make it easier on us. And and as Tony said, I mean, we like trees. We wouldn't live here if it didn't have trees. And we're perfectly willing to plant trees to replace it. I mean, and I think this is just part of the natural evolution of any forest. You know, trees get old, like this one's, in the report you'll see it's 80 plus years old, he's estimating. And it's had a long life, and it's getting toward the end of that life. And we'd like to, take it down before it causes a problem, but we'd like to see other trees planted to replace it. I mean, I love these things. But yeah, there have been nights when it has been difficult, and times when we were in the living room watching TV. I mean, there was one time there was a smaller limb that fell and it hit the roof, and it's, it has the roof line. There's no attic. It's just, the ceiling, and then, several inches above that is the roof, and so it acts like a big sounding board. And when this limb came down, Allison just, pushed on me and said, "Go outside and see what the hell happened." But things like that happen. But we like I say, it's just it's difficult to live under it, I guess.
I appreciate your comments. Is there any questions from the commission to the applicant? Not right now. Then thank you, and I'll open it up for any public comment. Anyone from the chambers here care to speak to this? I don't see anyone from the chambers getting up, and then I'll put it to online. Is there anyone in the public online that would like to speak to this? That I'm not seeing any hands.
I don't see any hands at this time.
Got it. Then I'll go ahead and close that public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who would like to start us off?
Well, I'd be glad to. I would, if I lived there, I would certainly want that tree down. I think it is really a frightening tree. And if we had them do 2 more trees, I don't think there needs to be 3, because that really crowding the situation. But to me, the tree, I'm willing to believe that it is dangerous. There were certainly several branches that had no pine needles on them, just some pine cones. And, if they were to fall, they weren't huge, so they wouldn't do too much damage with the tree itself. I think is quite frightening, frankly.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Burley. As a reminder to our commissioners, if you will please speak into the microphone so that the public can hear you and those online as well. Thank you. Anyone else from the commission care to speak to this? Yes.
I would agree. I appreciate the report that was done. It's very thorough. And on the site visit, I too would not feel very safe with the tree above me, and I feel the tree has had a full life and that it's probably time to bring it down safely.
Any other comments?
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate place to make the comment, but this would be more directed towards, I think, Bob, and you had shared the city had awarded the agreement to Davie Resources Group to sort of, as they're doing an urban forest management plan for the city. It seems like this tree is not necessarily atypical of many trees we might have in the city, so it might just be worth a note as they're doing that work to consider, should we be consider something for the city with regard to these trees that you've pointed out where they've been topped, and they have these branches going laterally a different direction.
Yes, certainly. This is not a unique tree.
Right? It's a very common tree,
It's
and
common.
yet it is a scary report, right? And there are many of them within our city jurisdiction. So if they're assessing along the lines of what you might have said, it might just be something for them to put into
Davie
their
Resource Group. They're going to do an inventory. They're going to assess the conditions of trees. They're going to look at future plantings of trees. Should we replant these types of trees in the future? So,
particularly the older ones that have been topped, that have this,
Right.
I think you described it as this, bilateral, where we have those, it would be interesting.
Yes, our master plan will be comprehensive, address the age of our tree population, as well as the species diversity and what's going to happen to the trees in the future. So it'll be way into that for sure.
From my perspective, I hate to see these trees go down, but I'm quite aware of the realities of the age of our forest, and know that we're actively addressing this in public spaces. When I saw this tree and stood under this tree, and put myself in the house, I immediately empathized with the position of the homeowners. I live over on Pescadero Canyon. I have a significant pine on my property, and thankfully it's not close enough to my house where I'm concerned about it, but I hear the trees and the branches go down in the canyon all the time, and we've had some pretty interesting storms over the last 20 years here. I'd hate to see a significant branch off of that tree come 40 plus feet down and do damage mainly to the occupants. So my recommendation, or I'd actually like to make a motion to, oh, and by the way, I am appreciative of acknowledging the work that went into the preparation. Thank you very much for that work, and acknowledging Joe's experience. That's we always appreciate as on the commission having that kind of expertise in here, so thank you. And appreciate the owner's willingness to pay an in lieu fee. I would really like to see at least one tree added to that property, but then I walked up and down the sides, and that house is literally, it's taking the lot, and it doesn't feel like there's a good space. There's a absolutely fantastic landscaping already in place on the property. It looks as if it's as well thought out, honestly, as one would hope. So appreciate the owners willing to pay the in lieu fee for each tree, and happy to know that we could tell them where those trees are planted so that they could be like, hey, those are our trees. Anyway, I'd like to make a motion to support the recommendation of, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm not supporting the recommendation to approve the removal of one large Monterey pine and require the applicant to pay the in lieu fee of $800 for each tree, and noting, of course, that the removal as approved, those costs are at the applicant's expense.
What do you mean by each tree?
Well, there was a recommendation for two, and so that was in there. So I'm making a motion to do everything that our forester said, except for denying it. So, is that going to work, Yvette? If I get a second, I don't know if I have a second. I haven't heard one yet. So
I'll second that.
there's a second. Yvette, does that work?
Yes, it does.
Okay, then let's go through.
All right. Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is passed.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's see, what's up next on public hearings? Bob, you said that we never had this many? There was a lot.
This is the most in at least 5 years.
Got it. Let's go ahead, and we are going to look at the approval or denial of the removal of 8 oak trees at Santa Fe Street 2, southwest of Mountain View Avenue. Turning that over to our forester.
Thank you. So this property in question encompasses 3 typical city lots. The owner, Mr. Britton, is proposing to keep 2 lots to the east together as one, and then subdivide off a third, and in turn build a new structure and with an ADU, and then a second structure on that third lot. So these are potential footprints. This hasn't gone through the full planning process yet. We're starting with the trees themselves. So here, Mr. Britton is requesting the removal of 8 oak trees. There's currently 42 trees that were assessed in the site assessment. However, 11 of those are in the public right-of-way, so the property itself currently has 31 trees, which is an abundance of trees for sure. The trees that are being proposed to be removed for the development of the property aren't in very good condition. They have several problems, most notably tree number 9 that is pretty much smack in the middle of that third lot. It is a very large, very structurally interesting tree. However, it does not have much meaningful life left in it. The same could be said of the other trees to be proposed to be removed, with the exceptions of trees number 10 and 13. So my recommendation is to approve the removal of the 8 oak trees proposed. My rationale behind that is some of the trees are not in good health, and some of the trees would prohibit the usefulness of the property.
Got it, thanks. Commissioners, do you have any questions regarding the presentation made by our forester? Doesn't look like it. Then is the applicant here to speak? Okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff Britton. I'm sorry I missed you at the site visit. I had a vet appointment I couldn't avoid. I don't really have anything to add other than I appreciate Forester's time and the planner's time and trying to solve the issue of trees before we spend so much money on the design part. So the only other thing that we didn't address, there's 2 huge Monterey pines that maybe you saw at the site visit that, like the previous applicant, I'm a bit nervous, but those aren't really into question right now, but hopefully we won't have to deal with those in the near future.
Are there any questions? Sorry.
Yeah, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
I just have one question regarding the proposed creating that third lot on the property. Has that been approved by the city yet?
Yeah, well, there are 3 lots of record.
3 lots of record, okay.
Yeah, so instead of making 3 individual properties, I was trying to, not intensify the use so much and have 1 house on 2 lots and 1 house on 1.
Okay, so that's helpful. I just wanted to make sure that third lot was presently
yes,
an existing lot.
They are for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
It looks like Evan has his hand up.
Oh, Evan. Hello, Evan.
Hello again. I'm the planner on this one as well. I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Evan. We appreciate that. Okay, so we've had the applicant speak. We'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone from the chambers? Please step up. And just in a consideration of time and our day, we just ask that you try to keep it short, please.
Yeah,
respectfully.
I'm sorry. My name is Kelly Francis, and I actually was hoping to get maybe 3.5 minutes instead of the allocated 3, just because I'm speaking informally on behalf of other neighbors as well.
Thanks, Kelly.
So I own the property next door to the south at Santa Fe 3 Southwest of Mountain View. And I first want to thank everyone for their hard work and all of the efforts and the opportunity to comment on behalf of myself, Charlie, who lives in the house as well with me, and informally the immediate neighbors. As a background, just briefly, 5 generations of my family have been in Carmel. I'm the 3rd generation to own the family house. I live full-time at the house with Charlie, other than when he is in his hometown in Virginia. My aunts, cousins, and grandmother live next door and across the street. This neighborhood is an old Carmel neighborhood with natural landscaping, lovingly restored houses, and many, many trees. It is traversed on foot by many people due to its natural landscaping and forest village architecture and its close proximity to the Forest Theater, Mission Trail, and downtown. The upper canopy and other trees on the property are very visible to neighbors and everyone walking through or driving through these blocks. As far as hearing notice goes, and I did submit something in writing that goes into more detail in this regard.
Thank you, you received it.
Oh, thank you. An email notice was sent out on Monday. I didn't see it till Tuesday. I tried to get a hold of different people and with varying degrees of success. So my comments are just based on that short notice. As mentioned in the summary section of my written submission, the trees are very important to us and the immediate neighbors who own the houses adjacent to the property, as well as a neighbor who pays $6,000 a month to rent a house that looks directly into the property. All of these people gave me permission to convey to you that an important reason that they invested in this Carmel-by-the-Sea neighborhood is the natural forest village trees and foliage. All of us understand that some trees will need to be removed for the new construction, but we do not yet know what that approved construction will be and why so many trees are being recommended for removal at this early stage of the procedure. Subject to short notice, we have the following general questions and concerns which are articulated more in detail in the written submission. One, why is approval being sought to remove 8 more significant oak trees before any building plans have been submitted, let alone approved? 4 trees, including 3 large oak trees, already were removed. Now additional significant large trees are recommended for removal simply because they're on the edge of the sketched out houses, and I didn't see that until just Tuesday evening. 2, what in fact is being proposed for the development of the property? And an important question is the developer now bound by the packet building sketches? Is that why the trees are being recommended for removal? Isn't a building permit application and its approval required before it is even known what the development will entail? 3, why does the recommended approval of trees that do not potentially interfere with the building sketches? Why does the recommended approval include trees that do not potentially interfere with the building sketches, assuming those sketches are even binding? 4, why are no new trees required to be planted on Patrick's fence line abutting the property to the west when the prior removal of the oaks created the privacy problem? You can now see into his kitchen, literally into his kitchen from the 1-story house that's existing. And finally, of course, Charlie and I also have some personal privacy and aesthetic concerns which are spelled out in the written submission. So many of us believe that no approval should be granted at this time because it's premature. So I'm going to thank you for your consideration of all of this and making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there anyone else from, there's no one from the chambers that care to speak?
Can you hear me?
Okay, hang on. Wait 1 second there. Let me just make sure.
Yeah,
Yvette?
I have a comment. The screen went dead here. Hello?
Hang on 1 second there. Joseph, we'll be right with you. Just 1 second, sir. Okay? Just making sure. Yvette, is that the only hand that was up?
Yes.
Okay,
that's
great.
all that I see at this time.
All right. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Thank you very much. My screen went dead for Zoom, and I apologize. I'm not a computer whiz. I live 2 doors down from the proposed tree removal, and I guess I'm looking at it from the vantage point of the same guidelines being carried from one family to the other, first of all. And I noticed today it was very thorough, and your group is an analysis of the properties and which trees should come out and why, et cetera. I didn't get, well, I'm assuming the job was well done. I didn't get that sense today, and nor did I have the opportunity to see this ahead of time. I wondered, why are they removing 8 trees? It's almost as if it's doing it in precluding the next step. Those of us that have remodeled or built, which we have in the last 10 years, went through a rigorous process of design approval. We had to change our plans 4 times to accommodate the trees. We cared about the trees, so we were happy to accommodate them. I don't see that same rigor in this particular project that equals what we went through or another of our neighbors go through. The trees, if they're, I think we should be nurturing trees back to health. We had 1 tree that was approved to be removed, and we said, no, it's a key tree, we're going to restore it, and we did. And I think that if a tree is dead and it's dangerous, then I think we ought to consider removing it. But just to arbitrarily, it seems to me, approve removal of trees to allow somebody to build multiple units on a piece of property, rather than do the plans, see where the trees are, let us take a look at the trees on site, and then have a meaningful vote. I would prefer that deeply. I think the neighborhood loves the forestry. We have the Forest Theater right above us, and I think the trees are an accent to that. And I think it's going to be a travesty to see 8 trees, and they talked about 2 more today in the verbal discussions. That's a lot of trees. That's a third of the trees on the property to be removed. It's going to change the physical appearance of the corner, the street, and the entire neighborhood. So I appreciate your time, and I would encourage you to defer this for further analysis and more input from the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Are there any other comments from anyone online? Yvette, are you seeing any hands?
I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and close the public comment section, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who would like to lead this off?
I just have a question as a new commissioner. What typically occurs with between planning, building, and, the forest as it relates to applications for tree removal?
It's up to us what we think, and then planning.
So it starts with us. Okay.
Not necessarily. It's
Right.
kind of that chicken or the egg.
Okay.
Is that chicken or the egg issue?
That's
In this case, since I was called out to do the initial site assessment, which I did, and I asked the Mr. Britton to come up with what he thought the footprints could be, so we could overlay those onto the assessment to have this conversation.
Okay.
So the footprints that are sketched out haven't been approved or seen by the Planning Commission. So again, it's kind of these chicken or the egg type of situations. Evan, would you agree?
Yes. Sometimes we get to a public hearing, the Planning Commission hearing, and when the story poles are installed for the Planning Commission, we realize at that time the trees will be an issue, and then it gets sent back to the Forest and Beach Commission for evaluation. So that was the case in the tree removal permit that you saw or considered a couple of public hearings ago, with the where the story poles were interfering with the coast live oak. In this case, we know that the trees will be an issue just because of how many are on the property and where they're located for a potential development. So we're trying to address the trees prior to going to Planning Commission because the outcome of the tree removal is going to affect the development that could occur on the property. So because we know it's going to be an issue to begin with, we're trying to take care of it ahead of time.
Okay.
Right, and I think to that point, it's not as if we as a commission were to approve the removal of those trees, it's not as if someone's going to go out with a chainsaw tomorrow and cut them all down. It has to go through the building permit process. I think we heard some comments from the public concerning the process, and I think perhaps maybe a misunderstanding about the way in which it still has to happen, right? Those of us that have gone through these projects know how time-consuming they are and how oftentimes it ends up going back and back again. So it's not as if someone will be out there tomorrow.
So it's literally as the forester is recommending, if we approve the removal of these trees, it's contingent upon them having building permits.
That's correct.
That, how do you say, that would, maybe not this exact drawing, but would, you'd have to have the building permits also.
Yes,
correct?
and you
Okay.
can put that contingency in your ruling.
Okay.
And if I may, if the design changes between now and then, and there's different trees involved, it may have to come back for a different set of
Yeah.
trees. So this is based on this preliminary design, these particular trees, and if this is approved and the design goes forward essentially as it appears today, then after a building permit is issued, then they can remove these particular trees that are authorized, I think.
I mean, my only 2 cents on this is that I think that there obviously seems to be some opposition from the neighborhood, which I think we should be considering. I do believe, though, looking at the trees that we looked at, that we've got some trees that are dying there. And, I would, emphasize to the neighbors, I think they should really take a hard look at the trees if that's allowed to come on property and look at them, because I think they are really in bad shape. Unfortunately, a lot of our coastal oaks are dying at this stage of the game, and it's just not the moth and the worm eating the trees. The trees have reached their useful life, and they're going to be, a fire hazard more than anything else, because they're not going to grow new green leaves in them, and they're just going to be, food for fire. And so I don't know that that's necessarily the case with all 8 that are here, but I think in our site view that it seemed to be that a number of them are in very bad shape, and I think removing them would be a better thing to do just from a fire hazard standpoint than anything else. And I think, again, it's happening all over the city, and especially even in my neighborhood, and even at the Forest Theater, there are a number of trees there that are going to have to come out because they're a fire hazard. And so, would love to have all those trees be looking like some of the trees we've looked at on other properties here, but I think that, a number of the trees that are listed of those 8 are dying or close to dead as they sit. So I don't know. I guess my point at this point is there's quite a bit of work that's going to be done to even get it through planning, and so maybe we revisit this and get a better viewpoint at that point about really what's going on with the trees, because I think we're going to get another look at this. It's probably going to take 3 to 5 months for planning, I would think, at this stage. I don't know the exact timeline, but
That sounds aggressive.
so given that, we're going to get a better look at what those trees are really going to look like, 3 to 5 months from now, because if there's no green growth going on any of those trees, they're on their way out. I don't know, maybe we put it off from that stage.
Well, my thought is that when you've had a vacant lot next to you, it's always hard to see somebody take it. And our lots, when they're only 40 by 100, you're going to have someone much closer. On the other hand, there's personal property rights to somebody who has bought the property and wants to do something different with it. To me, there's still, was it 32 that's actually on the property?
Yeah.
And you take
31.
8 away and you have 24, which is tons more than is recommended by the city. So I think that I would be willing to approve the removal of the 8 oak trees. I didn't see any that were hugely wonderful. And, I'm sorry about the neighbors, but I think we all have run into that when someone builds or wants to build on the property next to us. It seems to me that the owner has the right to clear out a certain amount, even though there's still going to be, 24 trees on the lawn.
Well, 24, I think, plus
Is it
11,
protocol
right?
to make
There's
another
2.
comment, or is it out of protocol? I don't know your rules here.
Do you want to tell him that it's not his?
Oh, Joe, right now, we're just discussing this at the commission level, so appreciate you just participating by listening. Thank you. Sorry.
I think it's the 31 plus 11 right now, so there's 42 total, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just agreeing with you that there are a lot of trees on the lot.
This is a tough one. I'm really torn on this one. I would have preferred to have seen some more plans, how we could have worked around trees. So I'm still considering at this point. I would like to wait, as Commissioner Sowers had mentioned, I would like to see us wait if that's possible, to see what sort of drawings are put together, what the plans are. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I would agree that this is difficult. I think when to Commissioner Burling's comment that a property owner has rights to develop a property, and I think I'm hearing from the property owner that there's desire to be respectful in terms of the impact in the neighborhood. I appreciate that. I would also imagine, especially considering that he is listening to the neighborhood talk about how they value their privacy, of course, like everyone does, but what it's meant to them, I would imagine that he would want, in good faith, to try to find ways to appease the neighbors. I don't know if it's his intention to make it his permanent home or not, but regardless, all the same, it's unfortunate that through the small parcel that he wants to develop, that there's just a straight line of trees right down essentially the middle of it, and these are the number that are in consideration. I was, when I first walked on the property, thinking, there's got to be a way around, right? There's already some structures here. There's got to be ways to figure this out. I think that Commissioner Sowers really pointed out the ill health of many of the trees, and I certainly acknowledge that, and then reinforced by our forester showing us the ones that were taken out recently for disease, and really kind of recognizing that that is an unfortunate part of our forest in many clusters around our village. So I would sit in the camp of going with the forester's recommendation here, and knowing quite well that it does take a long process, and we might see it again, as like our director said, that perhaps the plans get changed and new trees come into consideration and other trees come out, and who knows, in that time, hopefully there can be nice civil conversations between the owner and the neighbors about the character of the neighborhood. I mean, it's not, it's certainly, it's not something I'm not hearing when it's a multi-generational family that knows the area and lives in the area and has family and relatives that are in houses right next door. I mean, that's a big deal, and I want to preserve that. I love that. I think it's a beautiful thing. So anyway, that's me probably drinking too much coffee earlier.
Well, so I'd say certainly the forester's recommendation is that the removal is approved contingent upon issuance of a building permit. So I think all that motion would do is signal to the planning and building that Forest and Beach would support the removal of those trees if they're able to have their plans approved. Correct. Does that make sense? Yes. So that to me is different than just approving for the trees to be removed without any contingency. Correct, right? Yes. I think that the requirement to plant 5 upper canopy trees, I'm not sure if we heard, or maybe it was far enough back that I missed it, but does that help in terms, I know there's a lot of trees on the property, a lot of them look quite small and not so mature, but the 5 upper canopy, could you just speak to that part of the recommendation as well? Because then you're taking 8 and you're adding 5, so you're really removing 3, right? So let's just talk about that for a minute.
Yes, so based on the density recommendations, since we're looking at 1 mega parcel, essentially over 8,000 square feet, and looking at them divided then into 2 and 1, it looks as though that there would be viable space for 5 upper canopy trees. And that neighborhood right there is kind of the tail end of some of the larger Monterey pines coming from the north to the south. So that's a spot kind of canopy transition from the pine forest to the more oak dominated forest. So it would be appropriate to interweave some more of those upper canopy trees onto the lot, and it could accommodate those.
How many upper canopy trees are on the lots now?
There are 2 Monterey pines.
And the rest are all lower.
And 1 pine has recently been removed because it had decay in the trunk.
Okay, so I'd like to move that we accept the approval of well, Billy, what you've suggested, approve the removal of 8 oak trees, and with the idea that upon issuance, exactly, frankly, as you've written it here, and then require, and require the 5 upper canopy trees between both parcels.
I'll go ahead and second that.
I'm sorry, I was writing.
That's
Okay.
okay. So Commissioner Burling made a motion to accept the recommendation of the forester, and then I seconded it.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Commissioner Burling.
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey.
I'll abstain.
Chair Myers.
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
No.
All right, the motion is passed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's keep going with our public hearings. We have up next did I lose myself? Oh, the approval or denial of the removal of 2 oak trees and 1 eucalyptus tree at Carmelo Street 4, northeast of Ocean Avenue. And I'll turn that over to our forester.
Thank you. So here we're looking at a proposed addition onto the rear of a home here on Carmelo Street. You can see the white portion of this site plan is the existing residence. The gray portions are what is being proposed to add on to the structure. The lot is pretty constrained. There's really not any good place to add an addition except to the rear of the lot. And in the rear, there are 2 small oak trees that have been repeatedly pruned to accommodate, I assume, to accommodate the view of the property directly to the east. There's also 1 small eucalyptus that too has been pruned to remove any obstructions. Considering the size of the trees and that they're going to continue to be suppressed, it seems like it would be best to remove those trees that are going to continue to be a problem and plant something somewhere else on the lot that will be able to contribute to the forest character as a whole. So my recommendation, there's an error on the staff report, is to plant 1 upper canopy tree and 1 lower canopy tree. So on this plan here, it is proposed to put a small tree here in the back. That would be a lower canopy tree that would not grow into the view plane of the neighbor to the east, as well as put another low canopy tree out towards the street, and then introduce the upper canopy tree here along the property edge. So there's already views already being blocked by this pine and by this Douglas fir. So by adding 1 here in the line of the others, we won't have any conflicts with existing view sheds. So I recommend the upper canopy tree because of the density recommendations. That would get us to 3 upper canopy trees, and they went above and beyond with 1 extra lower canopy tree. So I recommend to approve those 3 removals and to require 1 upper and 1 lower canopy tree be planted.
This actually says 2 upper, but you're saying
Yes,
1.
correct. That was an error. It should be 1.
Okay, I agree.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions for our forester from the commission? We had the clarification on her recommendation. Any? Doesn't look like it. Then Is the applicant available and like to make a statement?
Yes, I would like to. I'm online. So thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Eric Dyer, an architect representing Mike and Ruth Massaro. Although the Massaros have owned the home for quite a few years, they actually now intend to move full-time to Carmel. And the existing house is basically only 850 square feet. So they really, to make it functional, they really do need to add a bit more floor area. And to do this, we looked at two important constraints, one of which was discussed. But one of the main ones was that it's really important for us to keep the really wonderful character of this house. I'm sure you noticed it when you visited the site, and the openness of the property toward the street. So we really didn't want to add in that direction. And number two, Massaros, as was kind of implied, don't want to add a second story because it would significantly interfere with views of their neighbor to the east. And so therefore we looked at the rear yard as where this could happen. Meeting with Sarah at the property was clear that we really should prioritize the large Douglas fir that was there, and that canopy, it sits to the south of the other trees, and its canopy extends over the smaller trees. And it was Sarah's suggestion to remove both the small oaks and the non-native eucalyptus. And then we both saw this great potential for trees to be planted in the open area at the southwest corner of the property. There's plenty of space for the trees there, and I think they can really be enjoyed by the public from the street. It's really a perfect spot for the new trees to go. So we definitely support the forester's recommendation that a large upper canopy tree be planted where we showed it near the front, and a lower canopy tree closer to the street. And then additionally, one extra lower canopy at the rear yard away from the larger Douglas fir. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dyer. Is there any questions from the commission for Mr. Dyer? It doesn't look like it. I'll open it up to the public in chambers. Anyone care to speak here in chambers? Okay, and then just look to online then to see if there's anyone online. Yvette, do you happen to see anybody with their hand up at all?
I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, so then we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to commission for discussion. Who would like to lead this off?
Well, I agree with their proposal. Oh, here. I agree with, you're trying to tell me something?
Just a little.
I agree with the recommendation. It seems like they've thought it out carefully, and Sarah's thought it out carefully, so I think it's appropriate.
I second that motion, if that's a motion.
Was that a motion?
Okay, that's a motion. That's a motion.
Mr. Chair, can I ask for clarification? Because the written document says,
Right.
motion says two upper, the verbal discussion said one upper, so I think the motion needs to be clear on what.
Yep, I agree. Why don't we strike that if that's up, actually, it's up to you to
Now, I'll go ahead and,
retract that and then make a new motion.
okay, I retract it, and here's the new motion, which is the same as the last motion. Anyway.
Well, is it the same as the last motion? Or isn't it?
Okay, you guys, here we are. Approve the removal of 2 oak trees and 1 eucalyptus tree upon issuance of a building permit, and require the replanting of 1 upper canopy tree and 1 lower canopy tree, all at the applicant's expense.
Nice. And was there a second?
And I will second that motion.
Okay, we've got a first and a second.
Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is passed.
Okay, thank you very much. Then let's see, we have the last of our public hearings today, the determination of the number of trees to be planted at the northwest corner of San Antonio Avenue and 9th Avenue. Again, over to our forester.
Thank you. I have this sketch turned, so that north is at the top of the page, just for reference, so you can have a better idea of how the property was laid out when we visited the site. So this again is one of those lots that exceeds the size of tree assignment per density on the recommended table. So the commission needs to decide how many new trees will be required as a result of a remodel of the structure with minor additions as well as an accessory dwelling unit. So my recommendation is to plant one upper canopy tree, which would be on the south side of the property. And I make that recommendation because there's already an existing line of cypress right down the property line. So if a new large tree is planted, it's not going to block any new view sheds. It'll be within a view shed that already has trees in it. Also, I'm recommending on the San Antonio east side of the property, the planting of 5 ornamental trees that have heights less than 25 feet at maturity. This will preserve any views from the properties on the eastern side of the libraries. And those ornamental trees will also, soften the visual effects of the structure itself. So overall, my recommendation is for 1 upper and 5 ornamental trees.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the forester from the commission in regards to what she's presented? Okay, it doesn't look like it. Is the applicant, would the applicant care to make a statement? Okay, great, thank you.
Good evening. I've participated in your whole meeting here. I haven't been. Endurance.
Sorry about that.
I don't think I've been to Forest Green Beach, but I haven't been to one of these meetings in a long while. I was sitting in one of your seats in the mid to through late 1980s as a commissioner, so I know what you go through and the decisions you have to make. Sarah made where she made the suggestion that there's absolutely no problem on the library's part, and Sandra Library is participating via Zoom. So, but there's no question on the front of the property with the 5 trees, the understory or ornamentals. We just want to make sure that we are in agreement, and I think we are. I put 3 flags there yesterday after Sarah and I had talked the previous day, and I hope you all saw those, but if you didn't, there's a photograph of them, and then also I drew in the where I think the tree's going. If that's the location, which obviously it was on that drawing, but I just want to double back, then yeah, we fully concur and think it would be great. We want to be careful when we plan it. If it's 6 or 7 feet from that beautiful 45-foot diameter at breast height cypress, that we don't interrupt the root zone of that tree. But that's pretty much it. Great. And did I say my name was Scott Hall? I'm a landscape architect and I represent the libraries.
Okay.
I've been sitting too long.
Great. Well, thank you. Are there any questions to the applicant? No? Okay. Well, thank you very. Oh, sorry.
Just one. It sounds like the recommendation on the one upper canopy tree is acceptable.
It is
to you
acceptable.
also?
Yes, if we're in agreement where that precise location is, and when we when you talk about it and you read it, I just wanted to make sure visually we were all keyed into the right spot.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? No? Okay. We'll open it up to the public for any public comments. Any public comments? Doesn't look like anyone's got their hand up or waving frantically. We only see Sandra, so.
I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Got it. Okay, then I'll go ahead and close the public comment, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who would like to take the lead?
I think we should follow the forester's recommendation with regards to the trees.
Okay, are there any other points of discussion on this?
No.
No? Or then would you like to make a motion?
And my motion is to accept the forester's report with regards to the trees on this property.
I'll second that.
So that was Commissioner Mickey on the second there, Yvette.
Thank you. Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes?
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Commissioner Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sauer.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is passed.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I make just one comment, perhaps for some of the newer commissioners, that I just wanted to clarify something that doesn't really affect this item. It's just a generic comment.
Please do.
The forester referred to view sheds. I wanted to make it clear that when an applicant requests to remove or prune a tree for the view, that's not acceptable. However, what is prudent, as in this case, is to plant trees so as to not to block the view in the future as the tree grows. So there's definitely a distinction. We want to stay away from blocking views, but for trees that may block views, that's part of the code. You can't
Except in the old
Except
mission
certain
track.
overlay location. That's right. But for by and large, you can. So I just want to make that point of clarification.
So on that point, the one property where we approved the removal of trees and planting of new trees, where they were topping those trees for the view, right? Were they requested to top them for the view? Like, because they were clearly.
That's undetermined.
Okay.
And
I mean,
however, the size of limb that would be pruned off of those trees would not be large enough to trigger the requirement of a permit.
Okay. That makes sense. I just wanted to make sure for clarity.
And I was trying to be really reasonable and take the whole 360 approach to looking at everything. And so,
Just follow up on our director's imparting wisdom to all of us. We'll welcome that at any time. I don't know why you would think you need to ask to do it. We're always looking to you for those guidance and directions. So.
Well, when I got demoted to this table, I don't know what I can do anymore.
We want to make sure you still feel like you're a participant. That's great. So on to orders of business. Now that we've got through our public hearings and we've cleared the chambers, orders of business are agenda items that require City Council, Board of Commission discussion, debate, direction to staff, and/or action. So let's see, what is our first order of business is going to be the City Forester's monthly report for August and September.
Oh, darn, I forgot it was 2 months. All right, so in August, just a reminder that we are still planting trees. I'm holding off on planting trees into October, which is now, so we have better weather for the trees to get established in. We're able to award our landscape maintenance contract to Town and Country Gardening, so they'll be taking over some of the routine maintenance of the parks and some public spaces. We replaced the backflow at the library. We promoted one of our gardeners to a senior maintenance worker. That's Renee Aldama. And this is curious. I found out that the trees on Scenic, the cypress, have algae. It's orange in color. It's naturally occurring. There's a population that's well documented in Point Lobos that have this algae as well. However, ours seems there's a lot of it, so a sample is being sent off to the forest pathologist at CAL FIRE just to see if we should be concerned. And this was a big month for me. This was the first time I actually got contractors to use an air spade or hydrovac to excavate around tree roots. It was big month for me. It only took like 2.5 years. So here's our standard numbers. So these would be applications for removals that come in from the public, primarily private property, and in a few cases, public right-of-way. So this shows how many trees we permitted to be removed, and then the number of trees that were required to be replanted, from upper canopy to lower canopy, cases where there's just a tree won't fit, and those locations that already meet the density recommendations. From there, it goes on to the annual comparison of permitted removals and required plantings. So you can see all that fun thing. And this graph shows us how close we are to planting upper and lower. So right now, they're pretty much at an equal rate. However, last year, we required way more uppers than lowers. This is the work that we've done in-house. So you can see this year we're close to being able to put out the amount of work that was pre-COVID with the pre-COVID budget. So I feel really great about that trend. So we're getting up more into preventative maintenance rather than removing. These are the administrative tasks that we do. So this new item, the fresh desk tickets. So that is the number of emails, voicemails, and things from the general public that Tom and I will process in the course of a month. So you can see that that's a big chunk of what we do every day. So then on to September. Again, remember, we're planting more trees in October. Town and country, we already covered that. The final recommendation to the Planning Commission about the benches has been delivered to the Planning Commission. And we are working on our on-call tree services bid. And we refurbished the table out here in front of City Hall. So again, the same numbers repeated, only with 1 month added. And you can see that trend here again. You can see how much, the amount of correspondence that we're managing. So I also wanted to point out how the tree planting process goes. So having spent much of my career in the city and county of Denver and having required to plant 3,000 trees a year in the public right-of-way, I've learned a couple of lessons. People do not take care of a tree if you impose the tree on them. So if somebody doesn't want a tree, they're not going to take care of it. You're just wasting your money. So what I do is I go out with a stake and a sign that says, hey, we want to plant a tree here. If you want to know about it or say something about it, contact us with a discrete number, and that number matches up to our inventory. So we place the stake, we do all the paperwork, all that stuff behind the scenes. And then we will request that the underground utilities to be marked so we can see where all the gas, water, all the electricity, all those power things are going. And that has a waiting time about 3 days before that gets processed. So then we revisit the site again, if nobody's called us, and verify that the tree can go where we want it to go with no conflicts with the utilities. And at that point, we assign which type of tree, which species is going to be planted there. So we're taking into account things like overhead power lines. We should plant shorter trees under power lines. We're looking for signs that that space in the right-of-way is an active parking space or not. People like to park their cars, and having a tree smack in the middle of their parking space doesn't always work out. Also looking at the context of the trees in that neighborhood, as well as that individual property's landscaping. If they have a really formal layout of plants, that'll drive what type of tree we'll choose and vice versa, that sort of thing. Then the tree gets planted, and then we put it on our watering rotation. So to plant one tree, we visit the property at least 3 times, so it can be time consuming. And any point along the way, we might be contacted by the adjacent property owner with a question or change or a denial. So just FYI, that's what we're out and about doing for the next 2 to 3 months.
Can I comment a minute, Sarah? Or do you want to finish your thing and I'll come back?
That was it.
Right, so does anyone have any questions for Sarah's? It doesn't look like it. Oh, wait, hold on. Commissioner Burling.
So, do you respond to people who, I mean, I know a couple of people who say the tree's going to go right where they get the shade. Are they upper canopy or are they lower canopy or are they anything?
Well, it depends. If it's on the side of the street, let me start over. Okay. Typically, communities will look at trees as small, medium, and large.
Yeah.
So we have this interesting construct of upper and lower. So what we consider lower canopy trees, everyone else would still consider large trees because a coast-like oak can reach in excess of 70 feet tall. So that's not appropriate to plant under power line. So in power lines, in those situations, we're picking ornamental trees that don't grow taller than 25 feet. So right tree, right place for the right reason and in the right way. So where I can get large trees in, like the pines and the cypress and that sort of thing, those are gonna be on the side of the street where there are no power lines. So the actual location will dictate the size of the tree.
My concerns are two things. One, where you've put the ones across from Sunset. Sunset badly needs parking places on the street, and you've got 3. One is probably in the way, but the other's too good. But the other things is, you know, you drive around Carmel, and you can drive around Carmel without even knowing there's an ocean there because we have so many trees. And like going down 9th is one of the where you can see the ocean.
Yeah.
And but you used to be able to see it beautifully from Ocean Avenue. You'd come down from Carpenter and you had this wonderful view, which was a big upper. You know, it wasn't even to sell Carmel. It was just absolutely beautiful. Then they planted all these trees close to the street down south of Monteverde, that group that's called, you know, Friends of the Forest. And so now you can hardly see the ocean coming. So my thinking of, you know, I know that, I mean, views should be considered. We're Carmel-by-the-Sea, we're not Carmel-by-the-Trees. They're both important, but by the same token, I mean, I hope you'd be thinking about that too, because it's nice to be able to see the ocean.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And on San Carlos, they're probably closer into the property line so that a car could park adjacent to it and get their car door to open. So the tree would be placed closer to the fence. So that preserves the parking space. Yeah. But having come from Denver as well, I'm very familiar with the view shed because it was all about being able to see the mountains whenever possible. So I'm cognizant of that. Yeah. And it's really important that as we work on the master plan, that those opinions are voiced through the process and that we're able to socialize those ideas with the community as a whole. So I agree with you. Things need to be thoughtful, and the community needs to decide how thoughtful that's going to be and where we take that. So there's my plug for the master plan public outreach.
Yeah.
Sounds like you have a committee member.
I also thought you had today, I thought you did a really nice job of that actually in a couple of the site visits. For example, the property, the last property we discussed where you talked about adding a cypress, you know, you were pointing out that it was in a line of cypresses already, so a tree there wouldn't block any new, how do you say, wouldn't create any additional or new view. And similarly on where the eucalyptus and
the oaks,
the 2 oaks, when you talked about where you placed that new upper canopy tree, you picked, well, it fits well where you recommended, but it also doesn't create any new view disturbance. Does that make sense? So I thought that was, I appreciate how you did that today.
Yeah, and different neighborhoods have different characters and they have different desires from their property. Like, you know, when you're on the hill, when somebody can see the ocean. However, if you're, you know, down in a valley, say on Santa Rita and 5th, you're not getting a view of anything. So in those cases, you don't have to be quite as thoughtful, and you can get larger trees in.
Just interesting, I grew up on Santa Rita, just up from Forest Theater, and we had a great view of the ocean, by the way. But that was in the 50s.
Yeah, I didn't plant those.
Yeah, too bad.
So just as a question, so what role will we play in the master plan and in the project that Bob referenced, the urban, the urban forest management plan? Are those the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes we just change the words.
Okay.
And
confuse you.
Okay.
Yeah. So typically these activities will have a technical advisory committee as well as a stakeholder group, or I'm missing the word, a steering committee. The thing that we have to be careful of is how many members of the commission participate, and if it triggers it to be a public meeting. And if you want them to all be public meetings, spectacular. We just have to do the postings at certain times and follow all of the rules. So I would love all the commissioners to participate in whatever kind of way that you have time for. So yeah, the more the merrier, because if we get the same group of the same local citizens that show up to everything, that's not representative of the entire community. So when we do our outreach, it's going to not just to be public meetings like this. It'll be online surveys. It could be direct mailing. It could be, through Nextdoor, through different social platforms, so that we can get the actual true feelings and thoughts of the entire community, not just the couple that choose to show up at meetings.
And if I can clarify, just one thing, in addition to individual support and the outreach and all those good things, there'll still be opportunities for the commission as a whole to meet, and Sarah will be making some presentations, maybe Davey, maybe myself. So there'll be opportunities for the commission to weigh in on as certain tasks are completed.
Good. Good.
Great. Are there any other questions for our forester? I just had one. I noticed that spike in August for removals, and is that historical? I just don't recall it jumping quite like that in prior years.
I don't know why that happened. It could be that, we'll see how low July was. That could have just been me avoiding checking permits. Yeah, I can't really explain the spike. If you look at the trend, it's kind of like every couple of months, it dips down below the double digits. It's just that 40 is a really big number for some.
So it wasn't a certain type of tree that you're seeing repeated requests for, and suddenly there was a surge or anything like that? I was just curious.
No.
Wasn't
that when they were doing all the trimming that was going on? Was that part of the removal process?
Oh, that doesn't go in the permitted number. Sometimes a property can do something to throw off the numbers, like they want to remove like 6 pittosporum that are only 6 inches in size, and they're invasive and not something we'd want anyway. So yeah, if it's a jump, it's because it's dead, dying, and dangerous. If it's not dead, dying, or dangerous, you guys get to hear about it.
Got it.
I think in 2022 you're below, though, aren't you? Isn't your run rate below last year right now?
In terms
by a
of
decent number, I thought, on your chart, your year to date.
Oh,
I think
there it
up
was.
one chart, you just passed it. I think it was 204, and we're at.
yeah, that's only halfway through the year though. So if that's August, well, I guess that's a little bit past halfway of the year. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we could come on in under
Slightly
that.
under.
Well, that's applications processed. If we're looking at this number, that also includes pruning permits. So
I was looking more at the removals, right? Like
Just
the,
kind of going down the line.
yeah,
Okay, well-
that has us running a little.
behind, or not
Yeah,
behind, but
yeah,
below
yeah.
last year.
That's. Yeah. There was a big glut of Monterey pines that just went down all at once, so that might be part of it too.
Probably a Monday.
Monday. It's just we had that little warm spell. We had a couple of days that were really warm, and then the trees just couldn't take the pressure from the bark beetles. And
Okay, we'll continue on then with our orders of business. Thank you for your presentation for us, Sarah. Next up, and last but not least, even in the stable, the Public Works Director's monthly reports for August and September 2022.
Thank you very much. Just real quick, the reason we have 2 months this time is because we were unable to hold a commission meeting last time because we didn't have a quorum. And the last couple of meetings, we had 3 commissioners. But the good news is at the City Council meeting on September the 13th, the council appointed, as you can see now, Commissioner Mickey and Commissioner Brzezowski. Whatever. I'm just kidding. That's mean. For 4-year terms ending May 30th of 2026. So now we have a whopping 5 member. All seats are filled, and there's so many seats filled that I got booted down to here. But that's good. We're really happy that you're here and serving. That's it for council actions. For some miscellaneous forestry and parks-related capital projects. We went through a selection process and we selected Nikki Needoff to be our on-call biological and permitting consultant for Mission Trail Nature Preserve. She has been our consultant for many years, but she had to compete with, I think, 9 other consultants. And she ended up being selected, and we have a new agreement with her for the next 3 years. So that's good news. And that's for any kind of project that happens within Mission Trail Nature Preserve. The Davie Resource Group, I think we covered that. And I think that contract will be is signed imminently, and we'll be holding a kickoff meeting hopefully next week to get that thing rolling. Let's see other projects. At Mission Trail Nature Preserve, we have 3. It's one project, but there's 3 drainage-related projects. Actually, 2 drainage projects and a footbridge. So the project's mostly designed and ready to go to construction. We also have an environmental consultant that did a biological and cultural resources review that's been done. We're looking at filling out the permit applications for a streambed alteration agreement and a Army Corps of Engineers permit. So get some gnarly permits so that we can proceed with that. That project is funded by the Monterey Peninsula Park, Regional Park District. So that's good. So we're getting close to starting construction on those improvements for the south end of Mission Trail. That's it for projects. Update on the Climate Committee meeting. We did have a meeting last month on September the 15th, and we received a proposal from a consulting team. This is a complicated project. We call it the Coastal Engineering Study, which is going to look at beach impacts, coastal impacts for sea level rise, for climate change. So it's going to affect the 4 zones of our beach, which starts at Pescadero Canyon, in the North Dunes area, the Armored Beach, south of 8th Avenue, as well as the area between Del Mar and 8th. The team includes EMC Planning Group for environmental type services, Hara Kastunich and Associates for geotechnical engineering and coastal engineering services, and Integral Consulting for climate change impacts. So we put together a team of 3 professional consultants who have worked together in the past for different types of projects. They've agreed to merge. They gave us a proposal, many proposals. We've narrowed it down. We took it to the Climate Committee last month. They blessed it. So we're taking it to the City Council meeting on the November the 1st council meeting. It's $175,000 for the first phase. It's all funded. And if Commissioner Sowers would be so kind as to weigh in and voice approval or recommend approval to go forward with that would be the time, if you so desire, at the November 1st council meeting. And we're also looking at getting a non-competitive $100,000 grant from the Coastal Commission to do phase 2. So this is a big, gnarly project. There will be opportunities for us to come present to your commission about climate change, sea level rise, impacts to the beach, so on and so forth. It's a very technical, it'll be a very technical study. It gets really into the nitty-gritty. That's it on climate change.
Is there a copy of that report that's going to come before the city council?
You can go online and get the report from the climate committee as it stood at that time, and then we're just kind of fine-tuning.
Did it address the strategies of the different consultants as a part of that?
Yeah, it did.
$75,000 bid?
The staff report talks all about how we got there,
Okay.
and then there's the actual the proposal itself, which is now being converted into an actual contract. Volunteer organizations, mostly Carmel Cares has been really going at it, doing great things. Over the last couple of months, they planted donated succulents and street bulb outs in downtown area, Dolores Street, I think there's a couple other streets, and Carlos around the post office parking lot. They installed new railings at the back of the restrooms at Forest Theater, which was a great project.
Bob, can I ask you a question
Sure.
about that? Is there going to be plantings of flowers just around as you walk in, or is it going to be all over the Forest Theater, or what?
Oh, at Forest Theater? Yeah, it's going to be throughout.
So is it a good time to be planting things that need to be watered? Here we all get messages that we're supposed to
Let me clarify that. At the, what month is it, October? I think at the August meeting of the Forest and Beach Commission, the Carmel Cares and Alan Wheat, the professor of horticulture, I believe, at MPC, presented to your commission their landscape plan for Forest Theater. They're talking about, yes, it would need to be water for the first 2 years. That's factored in.
But when we're all being told to not use water, should we be planting, or should we wait till we get maybe some rain?
We have free water, so there's a holding tank underneath the Delmar parking lot. We're not 100% sure where the water comes from, but it's probably spring water somehow that collects there. And if you notice, if you're looking west and you're in the parking lot, the bathroom is here. Over here is this little wooden thing. Inside of there is this huge pump. And you can put a fire hose onto the side of that thing and pump out water. So that's what Carmel Cares uses the gator for. So we are using this non-potable groundwater to irrigate. So yes, I think the same thing. So we have a source of free water.
It's spring water that bypasses the basement of the children's library most of the time.
Most of the plantings there that they presented are all drought tolerant, so it's not, I mean, again, I think it's going to take some water, but it's probably not going to be a lot.
Right. But anyway, it's been, there has been a planning design review. The commission wisely suggested that Carmel Cares works with the PAC Rep Theater, and they did have some comments, some tweaks. So those issues are being worked out between the two parties. So we're overseeing that. So we're imminently going to start planting. I think they're already purchasing some of the plants at this point. So that project is a go. So it's clear.
To the point about just, public perception in a drought when people are being asked not to water, and Sarah's point, it might be worth including that in your messaging, right? So that when the planting begins, there's some information about where the water's coming from and how this isn't a burden, because this is another ripe for the pine cone, right? You're planting all these things and we're being asked not to plant, right? So I just think I'm not disagreeing with the proceeding, but just sometimes the messaging to make sure people understand why this is a little bit of an exception, would be really probably very useful to people.
Sarah, you might want to talk about the watering the existing plants and the drought tolerant nature of these new plants.
So there's a whole term that I'd love to introduce to the community that nobody seems to use around here, is xeric, or xeriscaping. It's not xeroscaping, it's xeriscaping with an X. And it's this concept of very low input landscapes in terms of water. It's not zero water, but it's very targeted, precise water use. It's very, very conservative. So to your point, whenever I review everyone's landscape plans, and that's one of the lenses I have to look at things through is the low water use plants. So having that conversation about xeriscaping as a whole, and Forest Theater can be a really great demonstration garden just for that concept. And the plants that are being chosen are also pollinator friendly, so we'll increase our population of butterflies and solitary bees and all that fun stuff.
Which is one of the concerns of the PAC rep, is that they didn't want bees flying around
They're not-
during their performances.
Yeah,
So we're doing a little tweaking.
Isn't that, yeah, the bees aren't like a hive of honeybees.
These are the good bees.
The native bees are typically solitary, and they typically nest in the ground just onesie twosie, so it's not bees.
Okay, so we'll move on. Carmel Cares, they have a group called the Downtown Detail. Those are usually the ladies you see downtown with buckets, and they're picking up cigarette butts, and they're planting plants, and they're placing potted plants, and they're fixing up our tree wells and removing graffiti. So they're just doing a bang-up job. In my opinion, the downtown probably has not looked as good as it has in quite some time, so if you drive around. So they're doing a great job. Another thing we're starting, believe starting late next week, it's a group from Monterey County. It's called the Green Cadre. It's funded by Monterey County. It's a youth group. We're going to have 10 youth people supervised and working under the guidance of Carmel Cares, but also under the supervision of Public Works. So there'll be 10 youths that are doing green-related projects. So the projects will include, I guess no particular order, helping us do the wood chips along the Willow Trail and Mission Trail Nature Preserve. They'll be doing the Forest Hill Park split rail fence, which was approved by your commission several months back. They'll be possibly helping with the planting at Forest Theater, the non-pollinated plants. We'll be working at removing invasives at the North Dune Habitat Restoration Area, things of that nature. So given a variety of PAC, they'll also be learning about hand tools and kind of learning on the job as well. But looking forward to that, and if that's successful, there'll be many more opportunities to get, it's free labor, so it's kind of a win-win. They're learning new skills, and it's free labor to the city. So we'll try that out.
It's an AmeriCorps program.
And I think it's it for volunteer groups. And miscellaneous, it's always miscellaneous. After decades of storing material at Carmel Middle School, the yard, we had a storage yard out there. We were told to leave. It was time to leave. So we cleaned up Rio Park. We organized it better. We did some good mowing up there, and we just kind of cleaned it up. We removed the salvageable materials to there. So yes, we have more materials at Rio Park, but we also cleaned it up in the process. So we kind of think it's an improvement overall. Also, the guys added beach sand around the boulders at the base of 8th and 9th Avenue beach access stairs recently. We interviewed, and actually we have a new maintenance worker that will be started on Monday. His name is David. So as of Monday, if he shows up, which we expect, for the first time in the 5.5 years that I've been here, we'll have all 12 field positions filled. That has never happened. Okay, so that's good. We're still, for a size, this includes street maintenance, forestry, building maintenance, drainage, traffic. So it's still a small skeleton crew, but up until now, we've always had at least a couple of vacancies. Now all the positions are filled, so hallelujah for that. Forest Hill Park restrooms, we still get graffiti often, especially on weekends. We have a police camera out there. We have a suspect, we think, or possible suspect. So hopefully we'll catch the bandit, but it's been ongoing to go in and scrub the graffiti, some of it quite gross, and repaint over and over and over. It's not a fun job. We had 1.58 inches of rain. it was about a month ago now. Minor damage. We had a couple of, I think we had 2 trees down, 1 tree down, 1 in Mission Trail, I think 2, maybe 2. Pretty minor for a storm. We removed the fire pits on September the 15th. And
Forever.
I don't want to say.
Forever is never forever.
That is forever. The city council on the fire pilot program ended the fire pilot program. They said to, and it's going to go back to the council in November, to just have propane like it is at the Carmel River Park or River Beach. What's it
I
called?
didn't think there was any at Carmel River Beach, is there?
Not fire, only propane. Propane only use like they have at the state park. So that's going to be the new program, and we'll see how that goes, which is a wonderful blessing. We were very happy in Public Works because we don't have to clean those messy fire pits which have burnt shoes and whippet containers and books and everything burning in there.
They're burning the books.
We've seen bugs. Never, this is kind of gross, never saw a dead cat. I always wanted a picture of a dead cat in those things, but never had that. So anyway.
Halloween.
I just figured that would have a really good graphic for the pine cone. And also, the last couple of weeks, we've been chipping, putting a fresh coat of wood chips on the Sarah Trail, Mission Trails. We're almost done with that. And with the Green Cadre, we'll be doing the Willow Trail week after next. And I think that's all I had. Be happy to answer any questions.
I just would like to comment on the Carmel Cares work. It always amazes me how I see this group around town, and especially how I see, I'll find Dale just on his own, really working, just fingers just dirty and, just sweating and just loving it. And I'm really excited. I did happen to run into him and hear about this Green Cadre group. And what I really appreciate about it is the fact that it is kind of a next gen training opportunity, and that young people can come up and see what hard work is required, but then the rewards that come from it. And to see older adults mentoring them that way, I just think it's really special, and it's a neat, amazing grant that's come their way. And I also wanted to thank you for lubricating the squeaky wheels of these green chairs. Good work. So, yeah.
We should probably open up for public comments. Everyone's probably
yeah, that's for sure. Let's see. My screen's gone black, so I don't know. We might have ran out. I think the battery ran out. I think that did you go home? We understand. Is there a public comment out there? Let's see. Oh,
Cindy Lloyd always has comments.
Wait a minute. For sure, we need to open that up to public comment. I apologize for neglecting that. And well, hello there. Ms. Lloyd, it's all you.
Oh, great. It wouldn't be a Forest and Beach Commission meeting if I didn't say something after sitting through this whole meeting. My name is Cindy Lloyd, and like Sarah Burling, I've lived in Carmel all my life. Well, except for a few exceptions, and Sarah came a little later, but she's a hair older than I am. So we have a different perspective on Carmel. And I agree with Sarah that coming down Ocean Avenue, and as you went over the top of the hill and you looked down to the to Junipero, you could also look out and see the ocean. That's something that I started realizing was becoming encroached upon by, and I keep trying to identify the tree species, and I think it's mostly Acacia. But that beautiful view of the ocean, and I'm not talking about an unimpeded view. I'm talking about a nice filtered view, but you knew it was blue, it was ocean, it had a reflection of the sun on it. So that's just a little comment. The other is, I really admire you all for sitting through these meetings at the dais in view of the public who can be at home in our comfy chairs, and taking care of Carmel and caring enough to do it responsibly. So kudos to you all, and thanks for allowing me a little bit of public comment.
We appreciate that, our only and final viewer online. We've chased everybody out of the chambers already. Well, okay, that's great. So unless there's any other public comment, which there wouldn't be, it looks like we've got through our orders of business. Future agenda items, what have we got?
I'll have one next month. It's San Carlos. We're going to be doing some asphalt work between 8th and 13th. But there was, before COVID, we had had a public meeting to put in 3 meeting islands, or 2 meeting islands with landscaping in the new design. That public meeting didn't go so well. We revised it to look at 3 smaller islands. So we'll be coming to the Forest Meat Commission next month with the couple options, the smaller islands, the larger islands, landscaping concepts. We'll also have a separate public meeting at Sunset Center in December to listen as much feedback as we can, and then we start construction in the spring.
So it's not, so we still have a chance of getting rid of it, is that
You can still weigh in on it, yes.
Starting to explore outreach strategies for our master plan, and then we kind of forgot that we were going to do Arbor Day in October, so adding that on to Earth Day in April.
Earth Day in April, okay.
That's good.
Well, if that's it, definitely a marathon meeting. Special thanks to our new commissioners. We welcome you, and I can't promise that we won't have long meetings like this again, but I'm here to tell you this is the longest one I've ever attended. So have faith. A shout out to Tom Ford for the packet work. That's, I'm sure, a pretty big task, and Yvette for hanging in there with us too. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
The binder, yeah. The binder, I just take the...
So you leave the book.